All right. Good afternoon, morning, evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you for tuning in to the third episode of Honor Bound. Today I am joined by three very, very special guests. First, to my left, the man with one of the biggest beards I've ever seen will be Spaniard. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hello.
Also, we have Kaiayos, professional competitive player. I don't know.
Professional as for honor could be, I guess.
As professional. Yes. And also a mod on the competitive subreddit. Thank you again, Kaios, for being here. Yeah, and then Crack. Everybody knows him. He just won another tournament. That's what, 2 in a row now? PC, PS4, maybe Xbox pretty soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta get all that steel.
Yeah, all the steel.
Huge steal.
Huge steel. On an account you might not play? Yeah. But yeah, and he's a competitive player, as everybody knows. And I've brought all three of these guys on here to talk about the competitive subreddit. There's a lot of differing opinions on the extremes of both sides when it comes to the competitive subreddit. Some people find it to be useful, a place to go to try and find good information about certain characters, about punishes, about how the game is played competitively. And then there are other people on the other side who think that this is the opposite, that sometimes it's more helpful or more hurtful than helpful, that some of the topics and things that are talked about aren't are about as the quality as the regular subreddit of For Honor. So I wanted to bring these guys on to talk about it because we have mods, and then Crack is well known for the memes that he's created by going through the competitive subreddit and up and down. Great content. I would highly recommend looking it up. The first topic I wanted to jump into is going to be the info hub. And this is something that's kind of specialized because, Spaniard, if I remember correctly, you're the one who oversees that, correct?
Yeah, I currently oversee it. Before we start, I just want to say hi to Ludi Lou, just saying, unblock me now, please. It's very sad not being able to see your messages. Right, yes, the info hub. Well, I didn't start it, of course. It was Frankendoodle was the first one who started putting it together, as the concept being more detail you have to give more detail for characters' movesets and their abilities and things you want to do with them than just the value spreadsheet, which has had all the attack values and stamina values and in a sort of slightly more readable format. But I've been mostly looking after it since I've joined the mod team, so I've done the new pages for the various series that come out since, I think, this year at least. And I've also added a lot of features to it, a lot on the back end as well, so it's a lot easier to update things now and have them update across the rest of the spreadsheet as well. So a lot of stuff that I find pretty interesting because I love spreadsheets, but in general it's actually quite boring.
Okay.
But it feels like it's useful, so.
Yeah, I mean, the getting more information out there, like frame data and stuff for the characters, is obviously going to be helpful, so people can know like what to do while they're playing. Like something that I did not really know was that if you're in a 1v2 situation, for example, and your opponent throws a light attack and your teammate blocks it, you get a free guard break. Like this is stuff that I never knew until I started playing competitively and looking at like some of that stuff. So I can say that it's been helpful.
Yeah, the info hub is lacking on some of the more subtle things like that.
Yeah.
Because the moment we just give basic data for the characters, and whilst things like your recovery for being blocked, having a light attack block, is in there, it's on the general information sheet.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite clear that you have to put 2 and 2 together to see that, if I block this attack, I've got 900 milliseconds of recovery, which means I think it's 900 milliseconds, which means I'm vulnerable to a guard break from an opponent as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll move to Kai then. Kai, what is your role as a mod? Like, do you have a specific section that you look after, or do you just jump in at places where you're needed?
For the info hub or for the subreddit in general?
Both, but the subreddit in general.
So for the subreddit, I mean, the reason I was made a mod was kind of like because there was a lot of disconnect between the competitive subreddit and like the competitive scene. So they wanted a competitive player to kind of work as a proxy between the two, so someone could bring in views from the competitive scene. And
It's not just that.
be a
We also
moderator.
needed more coverage in the North America time zone as well. So.
That's true. And
you're very active on the subreddit as well. You answer a lot of questions. So.
Most of the moderating I do is like just look at new posts and see like, hey, is this even competitive? Is this, especially like misinformation, I try to make sure that doesn't get spread around too much. That's one of my favorite new rules, because I think as a competitive subreddit, you definitely need to make sure that what's being discussed is actually correct, because the spread of misinformation is probably one of the biggest issues in For Honor's community.
Yeah, for sure.
As far as the info hub goes, I don't do too much with it. That's mostly just Spaniard as far as I know. Sometimes I'll look at the tier list and see like, hey, do I agree with this or not? But aside from that, not much.
You helped me. You've helped with the feats, rated like descriptions of the feats.
I guess that's true.
I tend to write things and then just get people to check them over.
Yeah.
Ask people to write things for me.
Yeah.
It takes more time. It's also harder to do that.
Okay, so then moving on, Crack, I'd like to hear from you about what kind of information that you would like to see in the info hub that isn't already there or that should be there, and if the stuff that is in there, if this is things that you think are pertinent information to be put in there, if it should be in a separate section, like just basically your overall opinion of what the info hub is, what it has in it.
I mean, the concept is fine. It's just the hub with info that isn't apparent, or the game doesn't tell you that, you know, other people found, discovered, used, etc. I don't use the info hub like ever. I never learned For Honor via that kind of method. Like, hey, how does this work? How does that work? Like, and just Googling it and searching it and Reddit and videos and tutorials and stuff. I always just learn by playing and just watching players better than me. So, like, I can't talk to that kind of learning really using the info hub. I wouldn't be educated on how good it is or bad it is or how well it works or whatever. But I would like to see maybe some info on like tournament wins on all platforms and regions. Because an issue in For Honor that ties into the misinformation is what constitutes top players, who are the top players. You can even go as far as like second placings in tourneys as well to include that, so you can include a lot of consistently very high standard players. But I would like to see backdated tournament wins going back to like when Score and stuff were like doing the OG tourneys. I mean, obviously Score still plays now and still wins tourneys, but like backdating them and going through it so people can see at a glance the history of the competitive scene via tournament wins and
it'd be nice to
regions and
have
stuff like
a sort of Winners Hall of Fame thread or something.
I mean, not having that there, well, like what you benefit from something like that is you have a story for the scene or a history for the scene, and you have personalities and faces and interesting things. You know, it's another, as well as the knowledge of, you know, I can look up this player, does this player stream, what did they play? Certain players become authorities on certain heroes, you know, like Kai with Nabushi and stuff like that. So by lacking that, I feel like something's missing there.
Yeah, that would be something very nice. Sure. I'm not sure if it's the kind of thing that the info hub itself needs as part of it.
Well, you wouldn't have all of that in there. It would just literally information on who won tournaments. It would just be who won.
Yeah, like you could have.
You wouldn't even rank them. You would just have the history of the scene there for tournament wins. Predominantly you'd want to get 4s done, obviously, because it's the only viable competitive mode in the game. and you just backdate it, you can just go into Battlefy.
Yeah.
You'd see all of them. For Glory had their own ones. I mean, you could just look into For
I'll write
Glory,
that
it shows
down.
them. So it would be quite easy to backdate those. It would just be time consuming.
Yeah, that's the main issue. Is that it's already time consuming to update. I mean, I made a content page.
At the same time, there wasn't that many tournaments to go
I can
through.
do that if you wanted, Spaniard.
That'd be really cool, actually.
And you wouldn't be, showing bias or favor, pushing for one player over the other. It would literally just be info who is tournament.
Yeah.
Can I have a look at, what's the history of this competitive scene? Who's winning things at the start? Who stopped? And you can see gaps where people stop playing and come back again, which would, obviously teach you something about once you're at a high level in the game, you can go away and come back again and be at a high level. Mm-hmm. Just pick up a few things, So I just think it's very basic information that is lacking, and I feel like the place for it would be the info hub.
Yeah, I could definitely see a page. But I've been meaning to. I've started work on, and I haven't finished yet because I tend to start working on a bunch of things and it takes me ages. We're only human.
You do console and PC as well, of course.
Yeah, well, I'd probably just go to
PC.
Battlefy and just take every tournament that's happened, I guess. But then you'd end up with, I don't know, there are lots of tournaments that don't always show the.
Sure, some tournaments are harder than others, but over the course of the entire 2 years, they would add up to be more than. Like if someone wins 40 tournaments, and someone else wins one, you can collect that gathering yourself. It's just supposed to be pure information. The same way the info hub is pure information. Like the info hub doesn't tell you how often you should do something, or how much you should make one decision over another. And neither will this tell you who's strictly better than another player. It's just an information source that's very useful.
Yeah, that'd be a very nice thing. I will definitely add that to the list.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what Crack was saying on how he learns. Like he learned by watching these players who were better than him, and he learned strategies. He learned what the micro and the macro of playing the game. And something like this can give people insight into this person has won a lot of tournaments. If I can find them on Twitch or on YouTube or something, then if that's how I learned, I have quick access to these people.
Yeah, that would be a good way, because currently the info hub is a very much one-sided way of learning, and some people learn. I personally learn much better by reading information and then using it. So, to me, it's a nice way of doing things. But there's definitely a need for to support different ways of learning. The thing is, some of them are much easier to create and keep up to date than others. The info hub being kind of just raw information is comparatively easy to keep up to date. If they patch Cat one move, and so now let's say Long Arm doesn't have hyper armor on it anymore, you can just add that as a note in the section of it. But that actually has a really big impact on. If somebody had made a video tutorial about how to gank with Lawbringer, then that actually impacts that considerably. So they are much harder to keep up to date, and I think that's been an issue with a lot of the character guides that people have made over the years. We've got them all linked in a resources page on the info hub, and we try and do that with. I try to keep that up to date with things people make about different texts and stuff that they find, and if anyone makes good guides for characters, at least that I see, I will add them there as well. But it is an issue with them becoming out of date because the game changes fairly quickly.
Yeah, patches change, recoveries, how moves work, etc. Yeah.
So it's definitely something we need to work on. The issue is another thing is that it's not as easy for I can't make a high level guide about how to play Conqueror or how to play Berserker because I'm not a high level Conqueror or Berserker player, or really, to be honest, high level anything player. So it's harder for me to add that information or make a guide along those lines without reaching out to competitive players who do that. And I also tend to focus on one thing at a time, so I've just been focusing on organizing it.
I think a game with 25 different heroes that's starting to make fundamental mechanics changes as well as individual heroes. And then you have to take into account how those 25 different heroes interact with one another in a mode where they have 16 different feats. is like, it's just not possible. It's not possible to keep up on that. It is literally impossible.
It is.
There's only so much you can do, so you gotta be very selective. What am I putting effort into as an educational resource that will last? So in a week, let's say they bring out a mid-season patch that alters a gank, and now the gank is useless, but now 1,000 people use that gank, and now they're all doing it wrong. Because no one's going to look back after now, because they read it and they used it, and now the gank, and that's it, and now they think they know the gank.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why we try and keep it very quick. I mean, one of the things I've tried to do since becoming a mod is keep the info hub, the information that's there, up to date as quickly as possible. So, you know, I'm speaking to Freeze before the new character comes out and trying to get like pages ready to go. So the information is, and like when punishes changed about a few patches ago, they changed knockdown punishes. We had the max punish sheet up and accurate within, you know, well, less than a week, I think. So if you are using the info hub as something you go back to on the regular basis, then it should be functional in that way.
I mean, there's an issue with like the more detail you go into, the more for error, right?
Yeah.
And there's not even so much more room for error. Kind of incorrect way of saying it. The more detail you go into, the sooner it will be irrelevant.
That is true. Yeah.
Like because of a change.
Yeah.
It's kind of a balancing act with providing enough information that it's really useful, and at the same time not going into such detail that even a minor change in the game makes that incorrect.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's kind of what happened with my Nobushi guide. Ever since season 11 came out, the thing needs serious changes, and I don't really feel interested in playing Nobushi, so it's kind of just useless now. That's 22-page guide.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem with putting so much effort into it, with extremely low reward afterwards as well.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things I was hoping to. I haven't made as much progress with the tier list stuff as I want to, as I would want to either. But a lot of people see it as a. I know that's one of the topics that we want to move on to. Jumping ahead, a lot of people see it as like, and they shouldn't see it as, you know, word of God from the top players. This is
of course.
Character. But it should really be. I've always seen it as a learning resource on how to see if I'm playing Warden and I'm not doing as well as I should be, but the tier list says that he's a really good duelist, then I'm clearly making mistakes in X, Y, Z, and hopefully we can expand it in a way that it is useful along those lines, so you can sort of read it and see why a character is strong or weak, and then use that to create your own guide for yourself, as it were.
I mean, I thought about recently the idea of adding a kind of like a star or note to each character's placement, because I'm thinking about doing a personal tier list, which is going to be far inferior to, let's say, the collected comp tier list by score and set mix and whatever. So it's just a personal tier list. So obviously I have that disclaimer at the start, but I also want to include and have the, let's say, discussion starter of a character will be rated first, obviously, in the tier list, and then I would also judge on whether the character underperforms or overperforms at lower skill levels. So Warden would be a lower skill level underperformer. Raider would be a lower skill level overperformer, and just going through all the casts like that.
Yeah. It would be.
And then you could figure out why. Well, why does he overperform at lower skill levels and he's at this level at higher levels?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if they were to give the. I mean, I've gone on many a long rant about the win rate data that Ubisoft provide, and I've been itching to get my hands on the actual data that they use, because it'd be really interesting to see how characters do change their win rates cross-sectionally across the skill cap, because they only give you I mean, in the duel thing is, you know, as well as it being statistically incorrect the way they do their comparisons, but they only give, you know, Platinum Plus is a pretty big window, and so you're not really getting the whole up to the very top. But somebody recently published analysis of, they used the Ubisoft skill rating website that you could get your own things, and they got like the top 100 players data off, and it looked a lot more like the official tier list, the competitive tier list.
Mm-hmm.
And so clearly that is pretty close to reality at the very top levels. But yeah, certainly.
But I mean, like you can take that into balancing. If you can figure out why a character performs at a high level and then why they overperform at a lower level, and if those two things are different, you can improve the experience and enjoyment of the learning curve from lower level to high level.
Absolutely. I mean,
so you can balance both in terms of game design at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that make a character really good at low levels don't apply at high levels. I mean, the example I gave initially was JJ on release had very, very damaging light attacks at 500 milliseconds. I mean, at top level, that's not, world ender. It's nice to have, but it's not going to make him top tier. Whereas for starters and for console and for people who can't block 500 millisecond lights reliably, having 18 and 20 damage 500 millisecond lights is it's really powerful. And so there are different parameters in which you can balance around. And I think
because some stuff are exclusive to one or the other.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like things on the borderline of reactability are powerful lower down, like 100 millisecond on console. Other things that aren't unreactable per se at top level. But when you get to higher level, then people are blocking even delayed 400 millisecond lights semi-reliably, and it's really only like the most unreactable things that have, like Warden's Bash, Itakiri's X Sweep now, that are viable in that way. And so clearly, if you were to change those parameters differently, then you'd be able to balance at the different levels of the game independently, pretty much.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I wanted to move a similar question to Kai in what kind of information that you would also want to see in the info hub. Like an example for me, which we kind of touched on briefly, is like how to like properly gank with certain players or certain characters, because going into MM it can be very difficult to. It can be very frustrating to play when you're trying to set up ganks or something like that, and people just don't necessarily know what to do. And to me, that would be something that would be on the info hub, or something like that's on this subreddit as like pertinent information, especially for 4v4. What are some things that you would want to see in the info hub, Kai, or do you think what's there is good so far?
Well, I'd say I'm at somewhat of a dilemma. For me, the info hub, it's less like here's a full-on guide for everything in the game. It's more like, I'd say it's like a book on frame data. You open it up and you get all the numbers. Because the game doesn't tell you any numbers.
Right.
You wouldn't know the speed of an attack unless you measured it. You don't know the recoveries of an attack unless you measure it. So the info hub, I use it like a lot of the time when I know most of the speeds and damages of pretty much every attack in the game, but sometimes, especially on less played characters, I'll be unsure, so I'll go to the info hub and I'll be like, okay, this is this fast, or this does this much damage. And I guess if I wanted to stay true to that, I'd prefer it, but this would take a lot of work. Recoveries for all of attacks, especially
I've started adding them for some things. It's just a case of measuring them all. There's an awful lot of them. There being miss-hit block recoveries, and then 3 different values, as in guard break, dodge, block. For each of those, there's 9 numbers for each attack, which is a lot. I mean, I've added them to some of the bashes. If you go on Conqueror's page, you can see that I've added it to his shield bash. So, and that's kind of useful because it allows you to know what you can punish with a guard break, easier or harder. And it's something I'm working on adding to everything. I haven't really learned yet how to measure frame data myself, So I work with Freeze to do it a lot. And obviously, he's got to be making videos that are interesting and entertaining as well. Just measuring recovery of every single attack in the game. It's an awful lot of work and not very interesting. There are other things that I've recently tested myself that now I can start adding. So which light attacks ledge opponents, for example, is something I'm going to be adding to the notes. I've measured that now with the help of Froggy and Allmeister. So that's going to be going in soon. Another one that people don't know very much about is off-target attacks that are superior or enhanced on off-target opponents. So you know this a lot, correct, from playing Zerker. You know, your dodge attacks, if you do an off-target dodge light, it's not interrupted if it's blocked. Whereas, so you can chain into your heavy attacks if it hits an off-target opponent. Whereas JJ's dodge light is interrupted on block if it hits an external opponent. So that's going to be going in soon as well. We just need to make a post about it, and then I can start adding it to everything as well. But then you end up with the issue of having so much information that it's overwhelming to new people, and that's also a difficult balance to strike as well. We don't want it so that it's already for each character, you know, a full page with lots of stuff on it. And if you add too many numbers, it becomes impossible to actually use them for most people. So if you see, a lot of people don't know what recoveries are. So if half of it's taken up with 10 different recovery values, then it's going to be really difficult for new players who just want to know how much damage an attack does. Or how fast.
I don't know. I mean, like, For Honor definitely isn't a fighting game, but fighting games do have a lot of frame data, and when you look up the frame data for fighting games, you get this list of all this information. And if you're new at the game, you might not know, the jargon, like what everything means. But I think if you just included a page like, hey, giving an explanation of what everything is, like damage, how much damage an attack does, guard break recovery on whiff, how soon you can guard break after whiffing an attack. I think just having the information there is important, because even if you're new, like if you want to get better at the game, you're gonna want to know that stuff eventually.
Yeah.
Although it's definitely
to add a little bit of that with a new contents page. If you scroll down, it's got like a how to use the character sheets thing, and that sort of has a little explanation as to what all the bits of information mean in it. But then obviously it relies on people actually reading it. So
Which,
it's always
read.
I
I would like there to be guides on like proper ganking technique, just like how the meta is played, but I don't know if that quite fits in with what the information hub is supposed to be.
Well, we've got the guides and resources page, which then is at the bottom of each character page. So there's a page with all the different, like where I try and collate all the guides that people make for different characters and for different ganks and that kind of thing. And then those are referenced on each character page at the bottom of it. Maybe it should be higher up, but then you're running into where space is page and stuff. So if you scroll down to the bottom of it, there should be like a general resources and match up specific resources at the bottom that can link you to all the current tutorials and things. But again, these run into the issue of being outdated fairly quickly. And so some of them, like Alenikin made a load of really good character guides, but now many of them are out of date because there's been so many changes. And we've still got most of them linked in the info hub, but it's difficult to know if one move in that guide is no longer relevant. Do you delete the whole thing because a lot of the fundamentals are still the same? It's a difficult balance to strike. So I've, in general, left most of those in there. But,
so with knowledge like that, like with ganking and stuff like that, is this something that you guys think would fall on content creators? I know we've been talking about that the people will make guides and stuff like that, and then after a while they'll become obsolete because of changes. But the ganks with the certain characters, especially with the meta picks, haven't really changed too much. I think this is my personal feeling. I like Crack said, there's 25 characters. That's a lot of detail to keep up with. So perhaps limiting what you put up there to like what's meta for 4s or like the S tiers and the A tiers and stuff like that. The stuff that you're going to see could be a good direction to go, because when people are going to be playing in tournaments, it's more likely they're going to play these characters than necessarily what they're comfortable with up to a certain point, because then they'll realize I'm comfortable with Shaolin, but the character isn't going to be as good as like X, Y, and Z. So would something like this be better for like people, content creators, to say this is how to gank properly, or is this something that should fall on the competitive subreddit mods or somebody like that to keep that information out there? Because I think that's absolutely information that should be there for players to learn.
Well, so I'm actually working with Freeze currently on making some more generalized tutorial sort of for on the fundamental videos, but it's a project that's taking quite a while because everything does. But I lost my train of thought, sorry. It's definitely a thing that content creators, a lot of the times you need videos to properly illustrate things. If I put on, I don't know if Berserker's actually got that on the notes of on his zone, but saying like, you could have that in the notes section for each move saying, no, it doesn't say that. Right, that this hit stun is long enough to confirm an ally attack. Is on a few moves, and which bash is revenge lock to allow somebody to get another hit in as well. That's in a few of them, but again, it's quite spread out. And the difficulty with what you said about making like focusing more, giving more prominence to characters that are currently powerful in the meta in the information hub, means that it becomes less flexible, because if I didn't update all of the character pages, then what happens when a patch suddenly makes one character no longer meta, or makes a new character meta as a much more powerful than meta? So with the season 11, Lawbringer and Kensei and Conqueror and Raider, of course, are all much more powerful mid lane characters now that Nobushi is no longer powerful. And if their pages hadn't been updated, then it would be, that information would be lacking. So I try and just keep everything, all of it updated, which is tricky, but
to be fair, though, those picks were, the people that you were just mentioning were already still played and still considered viable. It's just that Nobushi was so powerful that she was just overshadowing everybody. But I mean, Conqueror was still a decent pick for mid. Lawbringer was still a decent pick for ganking. Kensei was also played, but just not over Nobushi in most cases. I just meant in terms of if you focus your resources on only doing the meta characters, because it takes so much time making good guides, then you run into the risk of then, again becoming obsolete and then not having information on characters that are less. Yeah.
That are still meta as well.
Crack, what are your thoughts on this? Like putting, is this something that the content creator should be responsible for? Is this something that the mods should be doing? Is this a joint effort? Should it be there at all?
I mean, I don't think anyone's really responsible. Definitely not the Reddit is responsible for creating those. Like, not at all. It's completely voluntary. The only reason discussion is had at all is because of the massive lack of educational resources in the game, which is one of the largest oversight possible. I don't think content creators are responsible per se about it either. I think the only thing content creators, you could argue, are actually responsible for is that the information that they do decide to put out is at least subjectively arguable or are objective fact, either or. So I don't think anyone's responsible for creating these. I do think it's funny, it's quite interesting that there's a lack of demand for it, or the demand for it is quite weak.
Yeah. If
I was to make a guide right now on one of the meta heroes, let's say one of the top 10 picks, and did a full 1s, 2s, and 4s guide and matchups and stuff as well, I don't think it will break 40k views. The demand is really demand is relatively weak. There's no one responsible for making it. There's a lack of stuff in game on. I mean, it's kind of like a perfect shitstorm of bad education, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because like, unless someone for altruistic reasons decides, hey, I'm going to put weeks and weeks of effort and 150 hours into doing this, and they make the guide. I mean, no one's going to make the guide. Why would you? Why would you make the guide?
Another issue is it doesn't even. A lot of high-level guides don't actually apply in matchmaking.
Then in 3 months, the patch comes out, makes fundamental mechanic changes. Now your guide has to be adjusted, or you have to make an update video guide and attach it to your previous guide. I mean, and what's the return for any of that? Yeah. Like, where's the motivation for it for anyone? Demand's weak, supply is weak, and unless there is a better reason to play the game at a higher level, then people aren't going to look for higher level content. So it kind of comes back around to like the actual game design and the PR of the game as well itself, of the game at a higher level.
I think people do naturally want to get better at it. So even though there's not a very large demand to enter the competitive scene, as it were, there's still a lot of people who read the competitive subreddit and are interested in learning their characters better. Yeah. So it is a weird one because you need to make guides that are that are accurate and give good information that's not just false when it comes to competitive level, but is also relevant to matchmaking level play, because that's what a lot of people want to do these guides so they can do better in matchmaking, not necessarily so they can join teams and win tournaments. Which is,
I mean, I would say, Filthy, a lot of the people who come onto Reddit already have formed their opinions of what high level is before they've witnessed any high level.
Yeah.
So they're going in with a framework that they want to stick to, and apparently most people are quite stubborn about sticking to that framework. So they're looking at high level with the wrong lens. So you could argue what they're learning. Sure, they might learn a couple of numbers and this and that, but they're never going to apply it correctly or look at it in the correct manner. I think there's a lot of perspective issues there, and that's tied to the PR, or let's call it the PR of high level play in the game, which is like a long-standing issue, which can only be organically fixed over time, which is like a frustrating, slow process.
Yeah, I mean, we try to help get more people into the competitive scene, but then it's difficult when so many competitive players say that playing at competitive level isn't fun.
I mean, I think it's fun. I've been saying it's fun forever.
Well, there we go.
I mean, I think if you asked some competitive players will just meme and shit because it's funny to meme and shit on the game.
Yeah.
But with other people are memeing and shitting on the game, you're having a laugh or whatever. But I mean, if you asked a more leading question, because you know what the answer is. So if you said, "Is fours the most fun in For Honor?" they would all say, "Yeah."
Yeah.
You know, if you asked, "Is it comfortably much more fun than all the other game modes?" like almost all of them would say, "Yeah." So you got to lead your question a bit harder.
Yeah, I guess so.
Otherwise, you'll get you get a meme answer, or game's broken, haha, that kind of thing. I mean, it's like something that was funny for a while, but I think kind of a dead as fuck meme at this point. It's just, game's broken, haha. It's kind of really, really dead for me as a haha XD. Because after a certain amount of time, you look at competitive communities like early Smash days, and you think, well, they made a Nintendo party game intensely competitive and hype, but there's a lot more to work with here than there was then for that community. So, why is this community still, that kind of perspective of game broken, haha XD?
Yeah, it also. I mean,
there's merit in the statements, obviously, but I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's Reddit doing it or comp players doing it or whoever doing it. I'm not a fan of like overly exaggerating or overly using memes or jokes or stuff like that, or going on about the same thing all the time over and over again. So I don't think it accomplishes anything. It eventually loses its, let's say, humor, or just becomes kind of an irritant or even an obstacle to
I would say it does become an
perceptions or to people coming in or I mean, I'm sure there's some developers that actually listen to that kind of talk and believe it or something like, or it demotivates. I don't know. It's just after a certain amount of time, it's just unhelpful and unfunny.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think there's lots of barriers to higher level plays, like the perception outside of the higher level play, viewers, players, mods, and content creators, not participators, whoever. So it's a tough one to resolve, like that burden on the Reddit. Like just no chance, not possible.
Yeah, I think I mean the role of a moderator as well on Reddit is when we don't decide what the community wants. I mean, or what the community's viewpoint is. We try. I mean, we've all as individuals got sort of our individual visions for what we want the subreddit to look like, what we want the community to look like. But we don't have, any real power in. We can't make people make things or make people say things. Mm-hmm. We can remove unhelpful comments, and we try as much as that to do that as much as possible with, think rules like no main shaming, no text shaming, and the misinformation rule, which we've now made an explicit rule. So that gives us much more ability to remove unhelpful stuff. But at the end of the day, we're just moderators. We can't dictate the topics of conversation or what people's opinions are.
Right.
So, no, for sure. But I mean, you can introduce topics.
Yeah, we've been trying to do some more like weekly discussion type things, but they haven't really taken off. Partly because of Reddit limitations. We can only have 2 pinned threads, for example, which is because we always got one as the Q&A mega thread, which is very active and very used. Shadow Puppet and Kai answer a lot of questions on there. I go in there and answer quite a lot of questions. A lot of users answer questions as well. And I mean, there's I'd say tens of comments per day on it. The most recent one is, I don't know, a few months old, and it's already got thousands of comments. No, it's a month old, and it's already got 1,700 comments. So people use the Q&A thread an awful lot. So we can't take that down. And then we have one other pin slot, and we've been trying to use it to promote tournaments more. Shadow Puppet in particular has been making a big push to try and get more community involvement in tournaments. We've had the sort of announcements up for the recent Spectator mode tournaments, and we try and do that for other big tournaments that happen as well. But it does mean that it sort of nixes our ability to have a weekly discussion post up there as well, because then we can't have it because it will mean losing one of the other ones, which is not really an option. We've been trying to do some more of that some of the subreddits have different style sheets that allow them to have like announcement posts and different tags and places. The difficulty with that is it doesn't work on every platform. So it doesn't work on mobile, and it doesn't work on new Reddit, because new Reddit doesn't allow custom style sheets, which is the limitations of the platform are we run into them quite a lot. So it's frustrating having that limitation in places. And we've added like a new menu like link at the top, so you've got some of the more useful links available, but we can't have a sort of similar version on the new version of the subreddit, but not on the old. But it's not as good because we have a limit of only being able to put 6 links up there or something stupid, and even then that's not visible on mobile. So yeah. Sorry, I'm just bitching about Reddit now, aren't I?
So it kind of just sounds like there's limitations on it, and when it comes to like the kind of information that people want on the subreddit. It doesn't necessarily fall to anybody, even though I think we can all agree that there's stuff that should be on there that would be helpful to newer players and people trying to play competitively or get into the competitive scene that should be there. But the difficulty is getting people to do it, and then if people do make a guide or teach people how to gank through a video or something, it's the return is not it's just not there, like Crack said.
Yeah, we do have, I think, oh no, it's not on. It's on the, so in the info hub again, on the sort of educational resources page, has got Barak's old guide of how to gank.
Mm-hmm.
Freeze's guide of ganking as well, although both of those are now outdated, the revenge changes.
Right.
So we try and make some of these things more visible, like the other resources tabs and that kind of stuff. But again, it's a case of trying to make it accessible, relevant, accurate. So a lot of time, and it's very time consuming getting it all together as well.
Okay, so this kind of segues into the next topic I wanted to talk about, which was like the purpose and the role of the competitive subreddit. We've kind of talked about this already, but is there anything else anybody wanted to add before moving on about the info hub specifically?
I'm good.
I think I've said most of the things about the info hub. Only just, I'm trying to, if there's more ideas for things you want to see in it, feel free to message me on any platform that I'm on. It's also send a mod team a message or leave comments on the info hub as well, because you can comment if you see anything that's incorrect. And I get around. I look at those very regularly, so I try and fix information or mistakes or things as quickly as possible. If there are other ideas that you want to see on the info hub, just tell me about them, and I'll do my best to try and get them up there. I'm working on a glossary page at the moment, because we don't have a glossary of terms, and that would be quite useful to have. I think we had one, but it's been removed. Let me know, and I'll try my best to add more features to it. I'm trying to work on a way to make it better on mobile, because it's currently in Google Sheets, which just doesn't work very well on mobile unless you use the mobile Google Sheets app.
Mm-hmm.
But that's quite a long-term project, and as you probably heard, I've got a lot of long-term projects that I'm currently working on. So
many projects to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if we're good to go, then I kind of want to transition to the next topic, as to like what exactly you guys see the role of the subreddit being. Crack, I'd like to start with you as a competitive player, as somebody who's been critical of the competitive subreddit. What do you believe its purpose is? Like, what is your vision for what the competitive subreddit should be?
I mean, I think the info hub is like the foundation for it, right? The way that's gone about. So, I mean, as a source of verifying a lot of information or going quickly for some basic information, what execution should I use? Is the new execution like good gameplay wise? Let me check the comp sub. It's that kind of a place. It's like a center for good information and or discussion about the game at high level. I mean, you could probably sum up any competitive subreddit with like, let's start there. I mean, I would like to see it reflect the reality of higher level play more. Sometimes there's stuff on it that's pretty wild type questions and informations and updates and stuff, and there's weird disparities of what's upvoted a lot and what isn't, and there's stuff like that. But I mean, that comes down to like the kind of culture of the people visiting the game, the Reddit.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure. Like, you can like try direct it one way or another through just like, well, obviously you have your rules like no main shaming, so that comes into kind of like online culture rules or whatever, where they're like directly intervening. in what's going to be on it, like allowed, not allowed. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. If a few more like issues can be identified as to, you know, should this be even here at all without suffocating the Reddit too much? Because that's what your concern is, you know.
Yeah.
If we keep pushing rules, well, how much activity are we suppressing? But I mean,
well, we already delete, probably say 75% of posts people put up. We take.
I mean, I'm surprised it's only 75. Like looking at YouTube comment sections,
True.
like trying to like encourage a culture of unbiased learning that's not filled with tilt and shit about For Honor.
Yeah.
Like 75. I think you're generous gods on that Reddit.
Well, the thing is, my attitude when it comes to deleting stuff like that is that I don't think it's helpful to just delete it and say you're wrong, goodbye, because people don't learn that way. If a teacher tells you you're incorrect and don't give you any more information than that, then it just leads people saying, "Oh, you're being elitist," or they reject that information. So I try to give a reason behind every post that I remove, and a lot of them are simple questions, and I try and answer them or give, if somebody's saying, "Oh my God, Hitakiri is so OP, I hate her," whatever, and that kind of rant thing, as well as just saying, "Oh, it's a rant post, sorry, it's not allowed." I try to answer their points a little bit.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you take, but like, I can see you trying to be the Reddit Samaritan scenario, but think about the effort required to go from playing against Hitakiri in the game, probably on console, and then going onto the Reddit, and then you type up your rant in your Reddit account, and then you hit enter after finishing your rant, and then you think that you're okay with the whole thing. On the competitive sub, now, having done all of that, there's absolutely no way, like, I understand you're trying to help their issue that they're having with the game, but I think the way they go about resolving that issue is more fundamental and important in that specific issue. So yeah. I feel like you're almost killing them with kindness.
Well, that's the
rather
aim.
than directing. Look, this is the way to go about it. You can get all the stuff here if you go about it this way, instead of, well, I'll answer your rant here, Mister, because I don't want to be rude. After you spent so much effort on your rant online.
Well, it's not about. I try to be kind in general, but it's not about that. It's more about. I don't say don't delete a rant post because I don't want to be rude to them. It's more that trying to redirect that energy towards learning.
But it's almost an affirmation of their effort, though, right?
What you mean?
They got relevant information in exchange for their online rant.
Yeah, that's true. But then if I don't do it, then at least if I give them some relevant information, it's better than just deleting it and not giving them the relevant information. I can't change people's minds, but you can only provide them with stuff to help them change their own minds.
I feel like the rant methodology for getting information will via that response to it.
Sorry, cut out.
It worked for them. Their method worked for them the first time.
Yeah.
So they're gonna do it again. So I feel like their methodology of learning about the game is a bigger problem than that specific issue they may have had with that individual character.
Yeah. It is difficult when people come. They only come to a place of learning when they're frustrated and want to vent. I mean.
Yeah.
And then it's. If ideally, this is again, it comes down to not having learning resources in the game itself at all. Like, when they want to play the game, they go and load the game up, and then but it's not like the game is providing them with any ways to get better at the game when they're in it and in a state of mind receptive to learning. And so if they only come to the competitive subreddit when they're angry and want to vent, I mean, it's very difficult to convert that into useful learning. But
I mean,
yeah, in general, I do try to give to answer and at least redirect their ranting into a place of accurate information. Because if you just say no, you're wrong, hands up, get out, that people don't react well to that. And I think you learn more from people talking with you and
I mean,
respecting your views, your feelings at least.
When you respect their feelings and you answer or redirect to what the, let's say you're trying to redirect to the real issue with the character or why this is happening to them. Do you also like tell them, ranting online on a comp sub is kind of bad?
Yeah, I mean, that's in the removal reasons. So, yes. And if they use hateful language or anything, they'll get something.
But I mean, even if they're not using hateful language, they're just ranting.
Yeah,
you just say, hey, this is just ranting. Here's your problem.
I mean, the removal reason we just remove rants and low quality posts, and then afterwards, if I feel, sorry, screen just turned off.
I mean, that's fine in that case. Like, as long as, if you want to go about the method of like the Samaritan and answer the frustrations, I mean that's fair enough. As long as you're telling them, yeah, this is a bad way to, resolve your problems with a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely a way to do it. I think this is actually a concept that I use at my job, where you have a client who maybe has a problem behavior, and in order to solve that problem or to get them away from it, they have to get some kind of attention. But the type of attention that you give them, like the quality differs. So if somebody just posts a rant and you guys delete it, just say like something along the lines of, this is a rant, we don't allow it, versus the attention they get, like this is a rant we don't allow, but here's the answer to your question, or something like that. If people are just getting the stoic response of we don't allow this, then they are less likely to engage in that behavior, because they're not getting exactly what they want. And I think that's kind of what Crack is trying to say is, like, don't necessarily give them the answer to what they want. Make them create a post that's within the guidelines so they can get the answers that they want. Or send them to For Honor Rants. I think there's a subreddit that has For Honor Rants. It's just like, go there. If this is actually your purpose, you just want to vent, go there. If you want to improve because you're struggling against this character, make the post to our guidelines and we will help you.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair enough, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so
Kai?
Yeah, I was going to actually go to Kai and ask, since you're a competitive player and a mod now, you kind of have both sides. What exactly do you feel like the purpose of the subreddit is, and like what's your vision for it as somebody who is part of both worlds at the same time?
I mean, the current purpose is definitely what everyone has been talking about. Right now it's less competitive For Honor, it's more like learn how to play For Honor. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. I mean, I think it's good that there's a subreddit for that, but if I could just enact my vision, it would just be like solely more of a discussion about tournament play, like people saying, oh, how will this affect the meta in tournament play? Like if you look up other competitive subreddits for esports, it's usually like R6 Pro League. Like, it's not, hey, how do you play this character? It's, oh, this team did this. Is this a viable strategy? How will this change how Pro League's played? And that's what I'd want for the competitive subreddits, more about the tournament scene and not just how to play this character. But obviously, for a long time, tournament scene's not that big. There's only a few consistent high-level teams, and at sometimes, like especially during like season 7, tournaments were just dead. There was pretty much no competitive activity. It didn't pick back up again till season 8 after that. So I can understand why it never got to that point, but also because a huge part of the community there, they do not really care about competitive play. They don't watch tournaments. There's such a disconnect between, hey, I just want to be good at the game, and hey, I actually care about like seeing competitive play, seeing how the game is played at the top level. I think that mostly dates back to the season 3 Hero series,
Yeah.
where Lernican won with unlocks, and people were like, "Oh wow, competitive play is just
Literally
this
stole
sleazy."
the money, dude. Stole it.
Yeah, it's just this sleazy. They're
Yeah.
sleazy cheaters who don't
Pollock
really
stole
know how to play the game, despite they were the best at that game. They were using the tools
Right.
at their disposal. But yeah, so I think like that was the catalyst, and now the community is just completely broken. There's the people who care about tournaments, and there's the people who just care about being good, but don't actually care about tournaments. So that's the issue, and I think it'd be really hard to kind of like bridge the gap between the community. But if I could, I would.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I mean, one of the things we've tried to do a little bit more is promote tournaments, and hopefully we'll get more people involved with the spectator mode now that it's it's going to make tournaments easier to watch.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that'll. I did a tournament summary post a while ago, but it was a lot of effort to write that, and I can't do it for everyone, basically. So it's hard to make people interested in something, basically.
Yeah.
And so we also have to we can't, for the people who just come to the subreddit just because they want to improve or they want to discuss the game in a serious fashion that's not completely drowned by memes. I mean, they are a significant number of subscribers as well, and so we can't ignore those. And we can't make every post only about tournaments. And people who want to get better, they need a place to be as well.
I don't think it only has to be about tournaments. I mean, when tournament play, you do also discuss like, hey, this is optimal play. And usually when people say, how do I get better at this character? People would say, oh, well, if you watch, here's a tournament from so-and-so's perspective. Like you say, here's a tournament where Bracket played, and if you want to learn how to play Berserker, try watching this, see these new strategies they use, yada, yada, yada. And I know I've discussed, like, I've probably mentioned it before. I really wanted to, pin. This would be a lot better once spectator mode is like fully enacted. Pin tournaments, like, and maybe just have a list of like competitive teams that are like, you say, okay, here's Scorbrand's team, who's in it. Here's their Twitch channels if you want to watch certain characters. These are the best players. And I think that could also be pretty helpful, because what's better if you want to learn how to play a character than watching the best player of that character?
Yeah. Something I've been wanting to work on a long time and haven't really got around to doing it because of other things is updating the flare system in subreddit and allowing people to put their Twitch handles in their flares. So currently if Zero Crack, if you comment on a post there, people might see your username, but they don't know that you're actually a competitive player. They haven't got anything to go on. It's just another Reddit username. And I would like to update the flares so people could put their Twitch things in, or maybe even have special icons for different characters. But it's different people in the subreddit, in the community. But it's we've had a lot of internal discussions about it in the mod team, because some of the mods don't worried that it will create a scenario where you can't comment unless you've got special flair or something, and the subreddit has to be more democratic than that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think people would just start disregarding everyone who didn't have like, hey, this is a competitive player. Because people like to discuss, and I mean, even if I'm talking to someone who I know has no competitive background, if they make an argument that makes sense, I'll be like, all right, that's worth testing. Like, I mean, you were just mentioning to me the other day about, Frog. He came to me, he said, hey, I think Valkyrie's full block shield bash might actually be a form to attack now. And I was like, well, I don't really know, but if it's 400 MS, it might be. So I was willing to go test it with him, see how good it might be. And although it's not something super amazing, it actually would be something usable. So I don't think that people would just like disregard, but there might be the situation where it's like, oh, this person says something, and that means there's no argument against it. And some of the times, a lot of times, if a competitor player is saying something, they probably know it, but that's not always the case. So I could see the reason against wanting flares, but I also don't think it'd be as bad.
Yeah, I actually think it's a great. I think it's a great.
I do think it's self-policing. If you're a competitive player and you say something and are proven wrong, it's embarrassing.
Guess that's true.
It's
But
it's a self-policing situation.
Yeah,
Like, no one's going to want to say anything wrong. It's actually one of the reasons I think a lot of comp players don't speak out about their opinions on stuff as much as they should. There's like the usual, will always say their opinion. Score, Aller, Clutch, me, Kai would. There's quite a few who would. There's also quite a number of players who wouldn't be so outspoken about their opinion. And I feel like part of that is they'd rather just adjudicate the opinion to people who always do it.
I could.
That's interesting to me, though, because I feel like if you're a competitive player and you have an opinion on something, and you have the correct mindset in that you're trying to learn, you're trying to improve yourself as a player, that if you were to give an opinion and a discussion happens on it and you're proven wrong, I feel like if people are scared of that or anything like that, then the problem there is a mindset. Like, people are going to be wrong. Like, you see people make mistakes in gameplay all the time, and sure, they'll get made fun of for it, but if they have the proper mindset, then they're not going to take it personally. They're going to learn from it. And if they have an incorrect opinion and somebody says you're wrong because of X, Y, and Z facts, then they should take that and say, okay, yeah, I see where I'm wrong, and they just continue to discuss it. So I think I think I agree with Crack that it's probably one of the reasons. I just think it's a very poor excuse. Because you're a competitive player, you should be pushing yourself to improve as a player. And being wrong is part of that. Don't learn.
I do think they do that. I just don't think they voice it when they should voice. I would like if more players play tournaments consistently voiced during opportunities that they had to do so. Or not they had to do so, but they have. They have the opportunity to do so.
Like, I don't think
they have a lot of knowledge and experience.
Right.
I don't think anyone's afraid of like being wrong. It's just, or I don't think anyone's like, hey, I just don't want to learn. It's more, if you're supposed to be one of the best players in the world, you say something wrong, like, it is really embarrassing. Like, if Scorebrand just says something, if he went out and said something that's just blatantly wrong, and then you're like, well, aren't you supposed to be like this, like one of the most knowledgeable players in the world? He'll be like, okay, I'm wrong, but it's also, it's like making a mistake. Like, if you were, acting in a play and you make a mistake, yeah, you can learn from it, but it's still embarrassing.
Sure.
But you do have some players, like Bracket was always one to voice his opinion, and he would get laughed at quite a lot, but sometimes his unconventional opinions would end up becoming meta, like throwing axe with people.
Yeah, I was just thinking about throwing axe as well.
Yeah, people like laughed at that. Like, why are you using throwing axe? And now it's probably the most meta tier 3 pick for Berserker.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely an issue as well with it doesn't help that the competitive scene is quite small, because you end up having sort of these ingrained opinions, and there's not a huge number of different people with giving conflicting viewpoints. I mean, Aramusha is one of the characters that's always been at the bottom of the tier list, and now I think people are realizing that he's definitely not the bottom.
Yeah, but I mean the changes made that occur. I don't think that's a fair example of
it's just
the issue you're trying to portray.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, it's more that people, if you bring him up now, a lot of people will still laugh at him, still laugh about it, because they haven't sat down and thought about the improvement that he's had. I'm not saying it very clearly, sorry.
I feel like Musha just kind of benefited, kind of rising tide raises all boats type situation.
Yeah.
Rather than, if one of your team was Musha, you'd still be like, hey bro, why aren't you Zerk or something? Why aren't you Shaman? Why aren't you Lawbreaker?
I mean, he's always, since season 7, 8, he's had those 40 damage, 0, like 100 millisecond Garbate vulnerable.
Yeah, they're stupid.
Yeah, heavies, which have been a powerful tool in themselves. And I think people like players like Alec, right, who play Aramusha and do fairly well. Am I right?
Alex is an interesting individual.
Yes, he is.
But people have used him in places where you wouldn't expect them. And even the most recent tournament with Orochi and the PC Steel tournament, Orochi and Warden picked in the finals.
I mean, I think that's more down to like Warden. I can see getting the finals any team. He's not that outside viability. If the team just plays well enough. Orochi making it was due to the lack of experienced teams in the tournament, so you can get carried on macro play.
Yeah, like
over
Orochi
characters that are better picks.
Yeah, Orochi is arguably the worst character in 4v4s, but Clutch has that, hey, I've won a tournament with every single character in the game, but a lot of it's just due to the fact that either he's winning just the last game, or sometimes there's these tournaments with just such a lack of competition, his natural skill can make any character win. So
I mean, well, the rest of your team is going to be meta picks, so then you just have one non-viable or not one non-meta pick, and then you can just make up for the rest of it with macro play and your own personal skill.
Yeah, I mean, there's also
not hard enough competition.
But then going to the Orochi example in the last tournament, yeah, he got to the final, but then you could say that all the teams before weren't very good, but he still did pretty well, even against the UDDA. I think.
I mean, you have to bear in mind
knowing the character really, really well.
It's important to bear in mind the tournament was about 7 hours in.
Yeah.
It was EU players trying to block like 400 MS lights at 2:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning for set mix. I mean, he's going to land way more attacks than if the tourney was 5 hours long and it was 10 p.m.
Yeah.
And the region difference. So there's a slight region difference, which I'm sure makes a slight difference. It's not a major difference. Most Russian players are totally fine to play in EU, but there is a slight region difference. It's like, I guess, in the middle of NA versus one of the coasts.
Yeah, but the point I was getting at more wasn't that Orochi is a viable pick. More that if you came up with, because the competitive scene is quite small, if you come up with a team that say, hey, one of our guys plays Orochi, people are going to laugh and go, oh, Orochi's useless, right? Whereas clearly, if the conditions are right and if the person plays Orochi really well, it can work.
I mean,
you can. And the top is of the tier list, as it were, isn't gigantic.
I mean, the scene isn't big enough for characters like Orochi to be completely cut off from participation in grand finals tournaments. If the scene was much larger, you would never see that character. That's kind of the point, right?
Okay.
So, like, the current tournaments are abnormal playing environments with respect to how characters' success will be in them versus how they are rated.
Yeah, fair enough. I think a lot of people don't realise that. And
I mean, it's not to say they didn't play well and stuff. Like, they did all that. And you can certainly win tournaments now in NA or EU with suboptimal picks. The skill level played by the top teams now is not exceptionally high. People are doing practice now and again. When tournaments go up, people go into practice mode. And they build up the team skill level to a certain point. But even then, I wasn't terribly impressed with our own team. I wasn't impressed with NA terribly. So I think there is room for teams, if they outplay people on a macro level and a mechanical level, they can definitely win with suboptimal picks. But it would take a lot of practice, a lot. And I don't think anyone is going to put that in or put their skill level on.
Didn't say something that competitive level play in For Honor at the moment is way below the potential for how good it could be.
Yeah, I think it always has been, actually.
Yeah.
There's just not enough competition and enough interest in the scene. I don't think the competitive skill level at the top has ever been near its ceiling, ever, by any players.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there were definitely better times, like, especially back in
I disagree with that. I think it's a myth.
Well, I don't think it's at the top, but definitely higher than it is now. I know in Season 5 that's probably the peak of competitive For Honor. And I wouldn't say it's the highest it could be.
I strongly disagree.
You don't think?
I went back and watched VODs, and I was like, okay, this is not the amazing, incredible gameplay I was led to believe.
So what is your reasoning,
Pretty much
Kai?
why.
For why season 5
Yeah.
was the peak.
Yeah.
Just because it was just the mostly more practice, and it's hard to say because just how I remember it, definitely more teams. There were a lot more teams coming into the scene. Like I think there were at least, and it's a laughable number if I say, hey, there's 4 competitive NA teams. That's like, oh well, that's just 4 teams, but just the fact that there were 4, there was so much more competition just between players, where now it's like, hey, if you want to be the best, you just have to beat tournament randoms. So that's just how I remember it. I don't like go back and say, oh yeah, I can see these people aren't making mistakes, because people did make mistakes. A lot of people did. But just how I remember it, it's like because of how much more competition there was.
I also remember, Kai, like, would you agree it was easier to operate meta efficiency in those? Because the meta was simpler.
Yeah. The game was so simpler. Like
it was a simpler game then.
There was
it was more cut and dry on meta. So to reach the meta was easier, and then it came down to like the individual teams' macro skill and their own individual practice between one another and themselves performing mechanically then.
Yeah, like
but
a lot
the
of
meta efficiency itself seemed to be a lower one to hit. It was easier to hit that shaman gank with everyone.
Definitely. I definitely
you know, like those kinds of things.
Optimal play. It was more like something that's just guaranteed. If you knew how to do it, you would just win, right?
I think that's kind of my point, Kai. Like, I'm not saying there was less skillful or more skillful than that. It was just that because of the way the meta was. That's kind of my argument for whenever I hear that season 5 was the highest skill ceiling thing. I think it's kind of like, well, maybe people were practiced more and maybe they were better then. Like, it's extremely hard to say yes or no definitively, unless you can go back in time, get one of those teams, do some sort of weird tournament or some shit. I don't know. But like, it's because I believe that the meta efficacy was easier to hit then.
Yeah,
more straightforward than it is now, because there's more mechanics in the game. There's picks in the game. There's more you have to practice for. We have our nerfs to like escaping now and stuff as well. Tags are managed like 5 seconds, leave them alone, 1v1. You just go and hit and run and you leave. Now people are left in a fucking unfavorable 1v1, maybe in a poor matchup. You know, there's all sorts that kind of thing going on. Body count nerf, which has, I'm not sure if anyone else has noticed, but body count nerf has made matches way closer. Mm-hmm. If the PS4 tourney on NA and EU, the PC tourney and NA and EU, games by and large were far, far closer than they would normally have been.
Yeah, there were lots of double breaking moments.
There was so much more post body count nerf, PC and console, and both regions, and all teams. It was crazy. I was like, what the fuck's going on? I actually asked you, Spaniard, to check points gen for, but it's actually down to the body count nerf and not being able to just sit in mid and just farm it up, have all your feats, and anyone who tries to take you on is unfavored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean the points still are. It still gives more points than the capture.
I mean, so I just want to say to Kai, it's not unnecessarily. It's just that I think it's an impossible comparison.
Yeah,
and it's a weird one.
It was definitely a lot easier to be better back then than it is now, especially like with how many you actually have to make reads in some situations, which was much rare back then. It was more just you know how to play and you do the right thing at the right time. Now it's like, hey, you have to think about what the opponent's actually doing before he does it, before she does it.
I mean, which is a good thing, right? Because that's pushed the ceiling for those players now to, you know, if the, you know, obviously there was a bit more practice, but even then, NA teams weren't anywhere near as good as they could be. Let's say, I'm just going to talk about the NA ones. I don't want to talk about my own team or tournament. But like even then, the NA teams weren't performing anywhere near. It's like even with the motivation with the steal and whatever else, and more people interested in it. like they weren't performing anywhere near as good as they could have. Like if the scene was like actually, popping or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's just like a big ceiling there for those same players to like up.
I'll concede that point to you.
Whereas they wouldn't have had that same ceiling, keep growing and keep getting better back in season 5. That's kind of like the way I look at it.
And then on that note, it'd be nice if we could get like the same level of participation from back then as it is now.
I mean, the game's more interesting now than it is then.
It is. It's so much better. Season 11 has been one of my favorite seasons, maybe right behind season 5, in terms of how the game has changed. But
yeah, it's getting more people into it. Really, Shadow Puppet's doing a lot of work with the Warriors Trials Discord, which I think is really good. And in terms of more teams, I know that the team that I played with, it was 2 people. Well, one person had played 1 tournament, and one person I've only played 2 tournaments, and Phil has only played 2 tournaments, and we all want to play more tournaments because we had a really good fun time. And so hopefully, oh God, Windows, I'll pick Q. So hopefully, it will more spectator mode will get more people playing in tournaments, and hopefully that will lead to more teams trying and practicing and competing, because it is good fun.
Yeah, and that was actually one of my biggest concerns when they first announced the spectator mode, and that they were region locking them because it was all dedicated servers. My biggest concern was the lack of teams in NA that would consistently participate. If this is the direction that they were trying to go, which the implementation of spectator mode is great, but if it's dedicated servers only, then there's going to be region locked tournaments, and the competition might not be nearly as strong as it goes on because of the amount of teams that just don't necessarily consistently play. EU, it doesn't seem to be that much of a problem as it does in NA.
It's still a problem in EU because basically what we've got is whatever team Clutch has formed at that given time, which is current UGDA, and whatever Russians are interested. That's kind of the EU scene. Yeah. And then you have outside of that. Now, it was nice to see the streamers involved last tourney. That was actually great. I loved it. Yeah. And they really performed much better than I thought they would have, which was cool as well. What I also noticed about the recent tourneys is with the spec mode, something people who normally would have been Daniel's gaming, the comp games, were actually instead very interested, and it was because of the macro level and being able to see rotations. They were almost looking at it like MOBA style. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of people seem to be super receptive to that way of looking at the game over the mechanical plays in the individual fights, which I thought was really, really cool and might be a very good door to open to get people interested in that level of play if you start looking at it like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do something with the tactical cam and have like maps of where the players have been or something. Like have like a.
I mean, if Yobi did that, yeah. I mean, like Kai wouldn't he be sick?
Wait, sorry.
Do you know what a heat map is?
You cut out. Sorry.
Do you know what a heat map is?
A heat map?
Yeah, so it's used in sports for players on a football pitch or whatever, and you can see where a player has been on that map, on that pitch over the course of the game.
Yeah,
you know those? Yeah. Wouldn't that be sick for Dominion?
Yeah.
Where was the Berserker this game? You know?
Right. UB already has that. I remember them talking about analyzing the breach maps with heat maps of where the players be, and that's why they changed one of the zip lines on when they updated.
I mean, that is a tool for spectator mode for casting will be insane.
That would be really cool.
It'd be super interesting.
It'd be really good to be able to see
low level and high level, same time.
Rotations on a larger scale rather than having to just see.
Yeah, I mean, you can see where they are most consistently, and you can just check across like a team's rotations really, really easily.
Right.
Most of the time, Berserker was at A. Most of the time, BP and Raider were together. Sometimes you see this difference in this heat map. That's when the Raider traveled to A when the Berserker died.
And it would be
you get the story of the game.
It'd be so great. Like even as just a team, if you wanted to see, hey, how could we improve?
Yeah.
You could see exactly what where everyone was doing at every time.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It would provide
Should've been
good,
here.
like a good VOD review, like for more information for your team to take in while they're watching.
I mean, I think it's the viewers who really benefit. I think it's a super
I think it's both.
interesting tool. Like everyone benefits, but I think that's such a super interesting tool for high level play.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
I mean, there's a lot of.
Go ahead.
High level play. Oh, sorry. I was just adding on to that. High level play is interesting to watch, and I think a lot of people who saw watched Spectator mode tournament would have agreed with that it was interesting. Think about the game in ways they hadn't necessarily thought about beforehand. The matchmaking players, you don't get that because again, there's very little in the way of learning resources in the game. People are matchmaking play it completely different.
Yeah, I mean that's a problem, right? A lot of us look at from a very mechanical way, and you look at 1v1 fights. You look how fights are going mechanically, and I mean mechanical is cool. That's the meat and bones. But like the macro is actually, in my opinion, much more interesting than the mechanical because you can learn the mechanical quick. What works? What doesn't work? Long recovery, short recovery. What's to punish? What's not to punish? When am I vulnerable? When am I not? That's the mechanical. I mean, once you've done it, you've done it. Once you've learned it, you've learned it. And after that, it's practice. The macro is far more interesting because it changes situation by situation. It's very contextual and very decision heavy.
Yeah.
As well as communication heavy, personality heavy, depending on the player type. Does the player take more risks, less risks? And I mean, is it the same for you, Kai? Like, that's what I think is the interesting part of the main.
I think that's the most skillful part, especially like just like something as simple as like going when you spawn. It's like, do I need to go here or there? So a decision as simple as that can be absolutely game changing. Where if you just know, hey, how do I counter this move as this character? Like that's something simple. But knowing what to do at the right time, that's not something you really learn by reading. That's something you learn by playing. And I think it's especially with the whole teams, you can see see how certain players act, and you can kind of adjust to it. Like you say, hey, you're playing against Skeptic. Well, you know what Skeptic's going to do. He's going to go mid. But yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
It'd be difficult to try and get better ways because you say you can only learn that through playing. I mean,
or you can learn it via.
You can learn it by watching
mode and heat maps and watching and.
Yeah, that's what I think. The thing we try and need to make some more guides and things because the info hub has nothing about that.
I don't know if you could like learn that by a guide, but you could definitely learn it by watching like real play.
Yeah. I was gonna say, as somebody,
it could be harder to take advantage of.
Surely there are guides for other games that have like high level. I'm sorry, I'm hearing my voice. Have like there are guides for other games that have this kind of macro level play that reference this kind of stuff. I mean, it's not. I don't know about other games. I don't like to the legal scenes, but surely there must be some way of giving it.
I mean, there's definitely like you can't tell decision to make in a given if there's lots and lots and lots of variables involved, but you can give them the framework by which they would be aided in making that decision. So you would say maybe you could do a prioritization of values on the map. What's the value of a teammates winning a 2v2 over there? Should you go there, or should you go to the guy who's could lose the 1v1? Is he playing so like, for example, let's say I am in mid. I can't get to the opponent enemy point very quickly. And what my teammate is the 1v1 with a black prior, and they're playing, I don't know, Shigoki, right? He's a good example here. I'm not, and the Shigoki's 1 HP. I'm not going to go help him because I know Shigoki can't run away and he's going to die before I get there. So I'm going to continue trying to make the most value out of mid and make sure I know what's going on the rest of the map and let my teammates know about it or whatever. Now, if my teammate's playing Shaman, I know he can just turn around, run away. So there's a really good chance I'll get there into a 1v2. And because of that matchup, that decision's totally changed. I'm now pushing a back up. So you can't say you should push back up, not push back up, because it might be like small matchup dependent like that.
Yeah.
Where like often you'll have to be counterintuitive, and I noticed this a lot. Like even I do it sometimes, or other top players, or comp players, tourney players, or people coming in tend to do it more often than not. People who are inexperienced do it a lot, where they'll call for help when they're 100% fucked, and they shouldn't be calling for help. Like, they're just absolutely fucked. You need to make use of the rest of the map. Just say, like, I'm gonna die, don't come here. Like, I'm fucked. There's no way you can come help me. Take advantage of what we have on map elsewhere.
You don't call for help when the shaman arrives to hit you with a one-hit gank. You call for help when you notice that the other person's stalling for the ganker to arrive. Because like, calling for help too late, like, then you're just trickling in and you're losing even more.
Right.
It's something that's just not, people don't know in matchmaking at all. I mean, you see people complaining that you don't help them gank if there are 4 people. If you arrive at your home point or whatever, and there's 3 teammates attacking one guy, and you go, okay, fine, I'm going to go mid. People will complain at you because you're not helping, even though you are helping them.
Yeah.
The team overall. It's because people don't realise there's a lack of higher level understanding of how the game modes work.
Yeah, there's a troubling lack of stuff like that, of information out there. And you can watch these tournaments all you want, and you can watch these people play, but like, when I go into matchmaking, it's very, very apparent that there's a huge disparity in knowledge of how to play. And you don't even necessarily need to be a competitive player or want to be in the competitive scene to learn this stuff.
I mean, you don't need to be mechanically good. Yeah. You can be mechanically garbage and work a lot more team than a warden who keeps wanting to 1v1 in mid, but like body count, Wilder's got a conk farming there and he's not interrupting the other farm, and there's a side point being boosted and he's always out of range, and he's just playing the 1v1 really slow like he would in duels, and he can't afford to do that in that Dominion scenario.
Yeah.
Like, it would be better if there was someone who was really bad and he was just making it hard to kill him, just contesting a point.
Yeah.
Like, that's more value than the guy who's mechanically better.
I run into that a lot because I'm mechanically quite bad. So, but I usually know where to go.
There's more importance in macro value than mechanical value.
Yeah, and there's characters that don't like have as much like mechanical skill required. Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
Make fun of Kensei players, but Kensei doesn't require that much mechanical like skill. It's more just it's a lot more knowledge based than just taking you like, what buttons are you pressing?
Yeah.
Now that was the big disconnect between Nobushi in competitive level play and in the general population. Partly because people in competitive play know how to get the most out of Nobushi to win matches. Whereas in matchmaking, people only care about kills and don't care about getting their team to victory.
It's a team deathmatch over an objective-based mode, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really frustrating that Carousel of Death, which is meant to be all about that, just doesn't seem to have anybody playing it.
Yeah. Yeah, that is crazy to me because it's probably one of the better modes, in my opinion. Okay, so we've kind of shifted. There is one more thing that I wanted to talk about because we're talking about the supposed to be talking about the role of the competitive subreddit. We've talked about like the perspective of a competitive player, perspective of a mod. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the other thing that besides the info hub, that I think should be a big part of the competitive subreddit and what it offers. I think that a tier list is also something that should be offered as well. And I know Setmix was doing it for a while, and then he left, or he stopped doing it because people were using it more as an excuse of like how other people are playing and I'm losing because of this. And like the purpose of the tier list was not being fully realized. It was being utilized in a completely different way. So I wanted to gauge people's thoughts. Span, I'll start with you. Like, if this is reasoning, like Setmix's reasoning for stopping it, if you agree with this, and should there actually be a tier list, or is it just the people aren't really going to use it how they should?
I think that there should be a tier list, but that Setmix was completely right in that people are using it incorrectly. And the issue is not should we have one or not. necessarily. It's about how do we make one that people can use correctly. And I was, we were talking the other day, me and Craig, about the using like more explanation for why characters are better than other ones, and talking about their roles, 1v1, 1vx, XV1, 2vx, that kind of stuff. Where they're good on the map and that kind of thing. And people, and yeah, making it a learning tool, which is as well as a readout of what top players consider to be balance, the game's balance and meta. It's difficult because obviously it's very demoralizing for any of the top players who want to make one if people are just going to be saying, Nabushi's garbage, why is she at the top of your tier list, you're an idiot. I mean, that's not helpful at all.
Right. Yeah.
And demoralizing people. And it's also frustrating for people who, we say it was Setmix's tier list. It wasn't just Setmix's tier list, and it wasn't just Setmix deciding everything. It was he was the lead author, as it were, but a lot of people were working on it, and he was consulting with a lot of top players. And it becomes an issue if it then becomes one person's tier list, who they end up taking the brunt of the criticism, which is often unfounded anyway. So it's tricky, and it's also something that is very difficult for me as a mod. I can't make a tier list because I'm not good enough at the game, and I can only try and help coordinate it, and format it in a way that people can use correctly. And when Setmix first stopped doing it, I was already a mod, and I sort of tried to leap in to the competitive community to be, hey guys, let's make a new tier list, and I think I probably trod on a lot of toes doing that because I wasn't very much a big part of it and well known at all. Hopefully now that I've been hanging around a bit more, people will be more open to that, and we might have to move forward in the future with it. And I don't want to be giving my opinions of which characters are best or not, because obviously I'm not a top player, but I do want to help top players communicate those opinions in a way that's constructive for the rest of the community.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on it.
Yeah. Kai, same question to you.
Well, from my understanding, Setmix didn't. The biggest reason why Setmix discontinued the tier list is because he thought it was too much work for too little reward. You really have to, and this is the same thing like why I didn't really update the matchup list. It's like you have to bother all these people, like all these competitive players, if you really want a true like tier list that's based off the mindset of the competitive scene. And then you have to have the full discussion, and everyone's like, hey, this character's probably a bit over here. Sometimes people, like for 1v1s, people like, hey, I think this matchup might be this way, and they'll actually scrim it. And it's just a lot of work. And if these people are just going over here and saying, hey, I don't see why Nabushi's S tier, like she sucks, then Setmix was like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
I think a tier list is helpful, but I think rather than a tier, like what's more important than a tier list is just going maybe like looking at like tournament picks, like say, hey, this character's being picked by these teams, like picked so often in tournaments, so maybe, and then you could kind of use that to argue a tier list. But I think just seeing how characters are picked in competitive play is probably more important than having a tier list is.
Yeah,
but that's just
it's a shame that Battlefield doesn't give you the character picks at all. I actually went back and tried to get the data from tournaments to be able to try and.
I mean, that would be an excellent feature, yeah.
But unfortunately, we can't. And I was doing it a bit with the recent tournaments, like taking screenshots of all the picks. But again, it's a massive pain in the ass to get the data, and it's only for the characters that people, the matches that are spectated. It's something I would like to speak with people about. Maybe if we could get people who scrim regularly at high level and tournaments to give screenshots of their their end screen, the scoreboards at the end of the matches, and then potentially plug that in to create a sort of more data-driven version of it, tier list per se, to show which characters more picked and which characters do better. But it's difficult to persuade people for that, and it might not even be very good anyway.
I mean, I feel like tier lists, the importance of tier lists, like creating them, like, is a bit overrated, or I feel like it's a bad prioritization to attempt to achieve. I think if the game's scene grows competitively to a sufficient size, tier lists that matter will come to fruition anyway as a result. So I feel like it's a weird use of time and effort as a resource, as opposed to putting that same time and effort into, let's say, improving the health or potential of the scene, which would then result in those tier lists anyway.
Yeah.
Organically.
Yeah.
That's kind of my feeling about
that's a very good point. It's a case of which people can do what things. I can make spreadsheets. I can make quite pretty spreadsheets, but it's difficult for me to persuade people to play at a competitive level. So, I guess.
You're not trying to sell them a car. You're just trying to you're just trying to have all you have to do is tell the truth about the game mode and make sure people have the resources to understand the game mode in that form. And I mean, just let them know when stuff is happening, encourage discussion on it. There should be a thread on the content for anyone who was interested in watched it. At least there was at least 800. I wouldn't say 8. It was probably about six. I don't know, because I couldn't keep track of numbers because I was actually fucking playing, of course. There was definitely about 600 concurrent viewers on it on Twitch, and a huge amount of people on Twitch are active on the Reddits, or at least peruse them. Like, a huge amount of them at least peruse them. So I mean, where's the thread for the tournament yesterday for EU PS4? I mean, where's the thread for the NA one before that, or the EU one the week before that? I can't remember which one, or the NA one the day before. The NA before even. I mean,
I think somebody did try and make
Someone did try, but I mean, it needed more updates. But it didn't get more up-ups.
Needed more up-ups. We need a tournament reporter to give a nice rundown.
I mean, you don't even need a huge amount of work in. I know you were thinking proposed write-ups, but I just don't think you're going to get your return on them, because write-ups like that take a lot of research and formulation.
Yeah,
to create them, a lot of time, and I just don't. They're nice to have, but I don't think there's good return for you on it, or the Reddit on it, more specifically the Reddit on it. Whereas the threads will get that discussion going anyway. Thread linked to VODs. Here's these TOs stream where it was hosted. Here's first, fourth place or whatever, or first, second, third, whatever you want to put in. Put the players' names in. And then people might just start talking about it naturally. I think at the point in time that For Honor is now, it's all about pushing organic growth through making sure people have access to or understand what's going on. Because you can't decide whether you like something or don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's tons of people who are I thought, on my YouTube, I thought, because I used to do meme videos, so there's a lot of people being exposed to, all of a sudden, these comp videos. And there was a lot of people, when they saw the macro stuff. The mechanical stuff, they're yeah, whatever. But when they saw the macro stuff for Dominion, they were oh, this is way, way more interesting than I thought it was. And they didn't know they would like it, because, well, no one told them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be nice to get, once Spectator knows more in, I mean, it would be nice to get more content creators posting VODs of tournaments or edited VODs of tournaments. So just.
I mean, edited VODs is a big. I think.
Yeah.
How many comp players even do YouTube
Well, I really liked your analysis of that match. It was from your perspective, and I thought that was a really good one. I linked the VOD timestamp at the same time.
I mean, when
we all did that.
When spec mode does eventually go public, I'm hoping Alern will decide to do tourney analysis stuff, because he's got the brain, so it would just be literally spectating the match. And I'm hoping he'll apply his brain to a microphone and then post it on the internet, because I would actually really enjoy watching that and seeing Alern analyze. Because if I do it, like, I'm just doing myself within my team. You know, you need someone who's really knows the game at like highest level play outside of the teams that are playing.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, Alern casting yesterday was great, because Alern has such high level knowledge about the game that, like, it's constantly interesting information or useful information, like, no matter what he says.
Definitely. Yeah.
So, like,
well, we lifted
when it goes public, I think it's a really good opportunity for.
Yeah, we lifted the content creator rule, because the subreddit used to have one of these self-promotion rules about that. You know, you had to post.
Yeah.
You couldn't post your own content, which I thought was hampering people's ability to share this kind of stuff. That is gone now. So you can, if you're a content creator and you post, and if you make this good content, you're encouraged to post it on the subreddit. And I think they do get upvotes, you know.
They do. I think
all
that's
that good karma, all that mock dudes.
That's fine, but I mean, I think spec mode is going to be the big thing for that. For, like, spec mode is going to be bigger for the game than people realize, because of the. Well, first, it's going to make the game look a lot more fun. So I like me and Kai. I'm sure Sorsu, yourself as well, Filthy. When you're like watching the mini tournaments, you're like thinking about rotations where people are going, "Why is fighting? Why is fighting? Why is he fighting slow? Why is he fighting fast? Why is he trying to kill him quicker? You know, why are you trying to stall someone out? Are you waiting for a feat? How many feats has he got?" You're thinking about all these macro things. And that's like that extra layer of interest. No one thinks about that. But when the spec mode is like looking down at the kind of like gateway drug into that way of thinking in For Honor is like seeing the people rotating around the map based on the control. And you could see it almost happening like to the Twitch viewers as they were watching it. Like they were like, "Oh, that's interesting." You know, the chat, which normally wouldn't have maybe looked at the games like in that manner. They're like, "Oh, this is a much more like or appeasing way to look at the game in that manner." Yeah. So when content creators, top players, I mean, anyone interested in making education content at all or analysis and that stuff, that tool is going to be super, super useful. And it will make the game more appealing to viewers and easier to create high-level content for at the same time. So it's a really big deal, not just for like tourneys, but for the perception of the game and the resources people have to enjoy the game more. So there's multiple ways that affects like the culture of For Honor, so to speak. Then it's like at first glance.
Hey, maybe the competitive subreddit can make a guide for how to use spectator mode when it comes out and all that as well.
Yeah, tell them to
camera work and everything. Yeah.
Turn off the legend. That'd be pretty good.
Oh man. Okay, yeah. So that's pretty much all I had for the purpose, like the competitive subreddit purpose. We've talked about the tier list. We've talked about the perspective. It kind of sounds like when it comes to the tier list that it's helpful, but at the moment that's not what should be the focus. Actually, I did want to ask, Haley does have a tier list out there, right? Or is
no.
So Haley, she stopped doing it, updating it.
Okay.
Haley gave it to me, and then she asked me to delete it, so it is gone. So.
It is
but the
gone.
one on the... Well,
I have a backup of it, but aside from that, it's gone.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a copy of it in the info hub.
Yeah, that, well, of last season.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's not like it's never been updated.
Yeah, it's not really been updated yet, which hopefully we get somebody to do it. But yeah, like I said, it's one of these things that a lot of people ask about, but they ask about it for the wrong reasons. And yes, the tier list is nice to have, but it's a learning. It's a readout balance, but it also should be a learning tool. And just knowing it because you want to know who's good. Very shallow use of it. And it's one of the things that saps motivation of people to work on it, because if people are going to use it incorrectly, people don't want to put the effort in to make it. I know it's a difficult thing to deal with. Hopefully we can try and make it in a way that encourages it to be used properly, and then the effort going into making it will be better. There'll be better return on that effort.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like it actually might not be that bad of a thing that there isn't a consistent or like an updated tier list, just because we all can pretty much agree that what it was being used for was not its original purpose, and that there are more pertinent things that should be done first before a tier list is made and consistently updated. And I would agree with that. And this kind of goes into the next topic, which was mindset. And Crack has talked a lot about this through each of these topics, about the culture of and the mindset of For Honor, and the mindset of the people that are going to the competitive subreddit, and how these are all good things to have, and obviously they're good information, but because of that mindset for the people that are going there, are posting there, are using it for information, it's actually more harmful. So Kai, I'd like to start with you on this. What is your perception of the overall mindset for the people who use the competitive subreddit the most?
I mean, I kind of went into this before. I think it's mostly people. The mindset is just how to play the game. For the most part, it's like, hey, I want to learn like what techniques work. I definitely think back in the day. I mean, back in the day, people did share tech more, but a lot of people, I think we've gotten a lot more influx of people who were against tech, and now they're not against tech. But I think most of the people are there just to improve at the game, or I think there's also a fair share of people there who want to enforce their own bias that they don't need to improve at the game, that they are playing the game. I think there's people who come there, it's like, hey, I feel like I'm really good at this game, and I want to just prove maybe to other people or prove to myself that I am. But yeah, it's definitely just I think the biggest mindset is it's kind of a reflection of each individual. It's not looking into the competitive scene, it's looking into yourself and how you play, whether you already think you're good or whether you want to be good. That's what I see the most part. And there's other people who just like, hey, I really like talking about the game, and let's discuss balance. And I mean, I definitely am all for that. I love discussing. I love theory crafting about For Honor. It's such a, I don't know why, it's just really interesting to talk about, thinking, hey, how could this game be better than it already is? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the two sides. Mostly the people who want to improve, and then some people who are like, hey, let's talk about reworks. Hey, how could this character be good? Hey, how could this character... I see a lot of how could this character be nerfed, but and that's what I don't agree with, because a lot of people say, oh, new raider, I can't deal with stunning tap, and you need to have the thought to improve as well as the thought to balance. You need both of those mindsets, because if you just want to improve, I mean, if you just want to balance without thinking, hey, maybe I need to improve, you're going to end up in situations where people are like, hey, you just need to get better, instead of asking for raider nerfs.
Yeah.
Right. So it kind of
sounds
of course
like they are justified.
Yeah, it sounds like it's more people are using it for a self-affirmation tool than anything else.
Yeah, like seeing how many people agree with me about whatever subject.
Yeah, how many upvotes they can get.
Those upvotes are powerful tools.
Up. Yeah, that's true. So I'll ask the same question to you, Span. What's your opinion on the mindset? Do you agree with Kai?
Well, I don't think there's a singular mindset. I think it's a bit unfair to present the subreddit as having just one mindset, because everybody who comes to it has their own different mindset. And there are lots of people who... So, and a lot of times you see like screenshots of rant comments on subreddit, and obviously a lot of these people type sharp because they want to rant, or to vent, they want to self-affirm their own feelings. But if you look at if you go to the subreddit and search like top posts of the week, almost all of them will be texts or guides or or some good balance suggestions. So I think that the people come to subreddit, they want to get better at it. They want to learn more about the game. They want to have good discussions about the game. And I think you also do see sometimes like posts about tournaments getting quite highly upvoted as well. I posted your analysis video, Greg, about your match, and that is on the top of this week. People are interested in that kind of stuff. There's certainly a perception that it's For Honor 2 or For Honor no memes version, because the main subreddit of For Honor is just so swamped with memes.
Yeah.
And you can't really post anything that's not, got the red eye effect on some character somewhere, and it won't get any upvotes. But I don't think it's a harmful thing. But I think there's people who want to find out, learn more about the game. There's a contingent of people who like testing and breaking and finding techs and stuff. That they sort of congregate on the subreddit as well. Overall, I think it's a positive place, and it definitely helps people get better as well. That we say that there's nobody joining the competitive scene, but there are a lot of people who are playing a better level because of the subreddit. Shadow Puppet does a lot of work with the Warriors trials, and we try and direct people to scrim there, and a lot of people do. And isn't like Shigsters, for example, was a player who started off coming into the Warriors trials, didn't he? And then he was in the grand finals of the NA tournament.
Yeah, he was mainly an MM player, and then started scrimming and moving up. People were seeing how good he actually was with Shaman, and his mechanical skill was definitely up there.
So I think there is definitely a use of it for competitive players as well, because a lot of techs and things are found by people who aren't necessarily the sort of the people who like breaking down the game and trying to test everything aren't the same kind of people who play the game at the highest level. People looking to see all the ways where which moves have iframes and all the weird interactions. Some of them can actually be useful at a high level and weren't known beforehand because people can't be bothered to find them out, or not say no. That kind of feels a bit harsh. I mean, it's just not as interesting to them, but it can actually be useful for top players to know these kind of. I mean, okay, I'm just going to big up myself now, but I recently measured all the points gains from minions, and a lot of this was known implicitly by top players already, but we didn't have numbers on exactly how much more valuable boosting a point is than not boosting a point, or exactly how much better mid lane is than having a side point. Yeah. And I think that is useful for people. I think people who maybe not the very top players who already knew that implicitly, but a lot of people who have played in tournaments but aren't necessarily best players have told me that was very useful for them to know, because they didn't realize that boosting a point was actually 1.5 times better than not boosting a point, or that mid was twice as valuable as side points, because the UI lies to them. So I think that the subreddit provides a useful thing as well, on top of learning, but also in disseminating tech and new information about the game. Yeah. I think people will appreciate that, and you can see that. I say that is the mindset. People like good content. It's not just all complaining, and the rant posts don't get uploaded, right, even if we don't delete them.
Yeah. So, Crack, then I want to come to you. One of the biggest criticisms that I hear when it comes to the competitive subreddit is that there's two. One is that the competitive subreddit isn't too much different from the regular subreddit in terms of the mindset and the kind of comments and stuff that are put on the posts. But another one is that it doesn't necessarily reflect a competitive mindset. For example, the mindset of the competitive players in For Glory is not the same as the people who go onto the competitive subreddit. Is this something that you agree with?
No, what do you mean? Do I think For Glory mindset should be in the Reddit?
No, what I'm asking if the the competitive player mindset and the mindset of the people who go to the competitive subreddit, if they're the same or if there's a disparity there? Because it seems like there is.
Firstly, you definitely don't want for glories on the Reddit. That's for sure. I mean, and no, it's that the general mindset is not reflected whatsoever. Like the mindset I think is the most common is people at the highest level, let's say top 40, 50 players in the recent 12 months or 2 years, even go back 2 years. It's like everyone enjoyed the high level. They enjoy participating at that level. I mean, that's at least my own motivation is I enjoy it. Like if there was 0 steel and 0 money weekends tournament, I still would have played in it if there was sufficient enough competition that I would get some high level enjoyment from it. Like what I'd like to ask Kai, like, is it the same for you, Kai? Do you just like enjoy just the experience of playing the high level?
I mean,
it's like it's
aside
not
from
even
fun,
necessarily winning it. It's almost like
I just love the competition. Like my goal was never to be like the best player. My goal, like playing competitively, was I wanted to be competition for the best players. I wanted to be like, hey, this is not just some random you can just stomp over. Right? That was my goal. I just love the competition.
I mean, so I think in one form or another, that kind of motivation is reflected across most players that play in tournaments and finish top 3 over a long period of time.
Yeah. I mean,
consistently.
There were definitely players like I know, like Master. He quit after he made a certain amount of money because he's like, hey, the game paid for itself. I don't need to play it anymore. So I do think there are players who just like are only in it for the prizes, or the game was so bad that they really didn't care about getting better, especially back in the day. But I do think a lot of competitive players actually enjoy it, even if they like to meme on how much they hate it.
I mean, you wouldn't play otherwise. And I mean, a lot of players who don't play are like still in streams every week or every other day or every day, and they're always filled in on what's going on, and they always know what's going on in the patches. I mean, or they at least come in during the week of a patch and ask, hey, what's going on with the patch, any changes? So, you know, like even people who've left and stuff or don't play at all or don't produce anything, they always stay up to date in one form or another to some extent. So, I mean, high level play is fun, and that's not reflected at all on the Reddit. There's a lot of stigmas still, like about high level play. Oh, it's like this or it's like that, you know, and they're really archaic and out of date and out of perspective. So, I mean, in short, no, it's not reflected at all on the Reddit.
I mean, it's not surprising that people who come to subreddit with the intention of learning how to get better have a different mindset to the people who have already learned, as it were. You know, a lot of people who come to the subreddit don't play at the top level, so you wouldn't expect them to have the same mindset as somebody who.
I mean, that's true to an extent as well. You couldn't expect them to have the same mindset either. But I mean, have they even had the opportunity to have the same mindset? I mean, everywhere else, what are they hearing about? What do they hear about the game from fucking console Facebook groups? What do they hear about the game from YouTube comment sections? What do they hear about the game from the main Reddit?
Right.
I mean, where the hell are they supposed to form? Where is the information that helps them to form a healthier or a more real perspective of what the game actually is, like in reality? I mean, where's that information? It's a real like culture problem in front. Yeah. I don't think you can blame. I don't think it would be fair. Like if I meme on it, but I can't actually lay blame at people who just turn up on the Reddit. I mean, where the fuck are they coming from? Like Billy on Facebook says this about Ryder. It must be true. Billy's played 100 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Rep 3 Conqueror, so I think I know everything about him.
It's a culture problem in For Honor more than like the Reddit's problem. Like the comp Reddit didn't make this an issue.
Yeah,
it's a culture thing, in my opinion.
I just wanted to go back real quick. I wanted to like apologize if I made it seem like I think that everyone on Reddit has the same mindset when I was giving my description. I was just saying like that's the majority of what I see, but I think that there's definitely other people, like there's definitely people who have different mindsets, and
Yeah.
also that was mostly for like commenters I was thinking about, as opposed to the people like posting content. I think the commenters and people who post content usually have very different mindsets, because a lot of the people who post content, they continuously do it. So you see a lot of the same people. Like you see Squib there, Phil. I see him quite a bit. Like you see the same people posting over and over and over again. So yeah, I just wanted to go back to that real quick.
It's okay.
Yeah. So is there, with this being such a culturally ingrained thing, is this something that we can take steps to remedy as a community? Like the subreddit itself, the content creators, is this something that just continuing to pump out the correct knowledge is going to actually change that mindset and that culture? Or is this just kind of, we're futile in our attempts, because it seems like there are resources for this. There are great people to go and watch and to see how they play and their mindset as well. Is this culture something that we can change, as you know, with people with access to all of this?
Well, I think you need to look at it with why is this culture happening, and the reason is because competitive level play of For Honor is completely different to regular. Now, if you could jump into matchmaking and how it'll be, partly because people don't have the knowledge, partly because the game doesn't give good learning tools, partly because it doesn't give good communication tools, so it's very hard to do good comms in matchmaking. I mean, nobody uses voice chat in matchmaking, and it's hard to get people to focus on the objective rather than just running in and smacking the bloke with a sword. So if there's not the same culture divide if you compare, you know, people who play football with their mates and watch football on TV are going to have football with their mates looks like football on TV. I'm talking about soccer, by the way. I don't know American football.
Sure.
Because they're the same game and they work in a similar way. Both I mean, obviously there's massive skill differences and there's important tactical differences as well, but people know about positioning on the match, on the field, and that's part of playing football, even if you're just playing with your friends. Whereas rotations and team composition and things like that in the integral parts of competitive For Honor are not even tangential parts of matchmaking For Honor. And it's very difficult to know how to, because as long as that divide exists in the game, that divide will will be reflected in the differences in culture between competitive and casual players, as it were. And whilst we can try and do as much as we can by providing more knowledge so that people play the game better and closer to what it's like competitively, that there's only so much we can do that, because you can't educate everybody. And if you go into a matchmaking with you're playing with a 2-stack and your friend knows how to play properly, but the 2 people on your team don't know how to play properly, or the 1 person and 1 bot on your team don't know how to play properly, the match is not going to look anything like competitive For Honor. And I don't know I don't know how to solve that problem, frankly. Educating people as best as we can is the only route that I know of so far. I know that I've spoken. One of the things Freeze says occasionally is that why he does all these videos about punishes and how to gang properly and all this informational stuff is so that the people he plays with in matchmaking won't be so fucking annoying.
Right.
And partly that, our motivation is like, I hate playing with. It's awful to going matchmaking and playing with people who just play so badly and don't know what to do, and it's very frustrating. And that's why we make educational content, so hopefully some of these people will see it and not be quite as bad. But beyond that, I don't think it's not possible to make the game play the same at a competitive level as it does at a matchmaking level. So that divide's always going to exist, at least as far as I can tell.
Okay. Kai, do you have any thoughts on this topic as well?
No, I think everyone else covered it pretty well. Sorry.
Okay. No, hey, that's fine. Crack, what about you? Do you think we can, what we're doing is enough to try and change the culture?
I mean, like cultural shifts are organic things that can be, obviously you can still push culture, stuff pushing and pulling culture online, IRL, in all sorts of directions, spheres all the time. But I mean, I think the main like thing that will like shift For Honor, or that perspective, or that view, the way it's viewed outside and inside the game, players and non-players, will be when tournaments are super fun to watch and people can go to one place to find out about all the tournament stuff, all the recent tournaments, past tournaments, players, and the whole scene will be collected in one place, and they're fun to participate in, fun to watch, interesting to watch, and all that happening at the same time. I think that will be the start of a shift in perceptions in and outside the game.
And that should hopefully reflect itself in,
rather than flat out information. Information's great, obviously, but I mean, just pushing out information day and night isn't going to that particular issue.
Yeah, and it kind of seems like there are some streamers that I watch that kind of harp on the competitive community, and sometimes it's memeing, sometimes it's not, and I feel like that doesn't necessarily help, but I do agree with Crack that it's going to be an organic thing, and with Spectator mode coming up and being able to showcase just how competitive 4v4s can be, how fun the game can be at a competitive level in 4s, can really help push that idea that playing comp is fun, that it may not be how we all want to play. I think most competitive players will tell you that in order to play correctly, sometimes it's not the most fun.
I forgot to add, Sorsu, solo and duo queue rank dominion.
Oh yeah,
like there's multiple things place at the same time. Like obviously the spec mode also brings the analysis content that we talked about. The spec mode also makes tourneys more fun. One place to see what's going on with the entire competitive scene without having to check this guy's Discord, go to this person's Twitch. Just literally one place where everything you need to know about the comp scene is there, and the TOs and where they host and they do stuff. Things are tied to that. So kind of like Kai's vision for the Reddit, I think some place like that will be necessary, even if it starts small. I think it's really, really important, much more important than people think. The spec mod obviously brings all the extra benefits we talked about before. The rank dominion that I learned did a really great video on, explaining it all the way through. I think that needs to be in place, and all this stuff needs to be in place at the same time. Not like, as opposed to like, it doesn't matter who's in the comp scene at that time. It just matters that all these tools and these ways and means of enjoying it, viewing it, participating in it, being knowledgeable, just not about the games and characters, but people like to know about players and personalities, because drama is interesting.
Right.
You might be rooting for a particular player. You might prefer one over the other. You might hate this guy, so you like to see him lose, so you watch that. I mean, it's like there's all sorts of reasons people like things and scenes. Like when people talk about Dota, they talk about teams, they talk about players. They don't just necessarily talk about this character performs this way, this team perform that way. They'll also talk about people, teams and things like that, because it's interesting, like the person aspect of it. And there's no place to go to in For Honor for that now. But I do think Kai's vision for that kind of a place is something that will be really needed, and I'd love to see it sometime.
Oh, maybe we can try and work to make the competitive subreddit a bit more like that.
Or
that's kind of a culture thing too, isn't it, Kai? Like, that's super important, IMO.
Yeah, I mean, having a community of surrounding, not just like a community of competitive players, but also a community of people who watch the competitive scene. That's really good for helping the competitive scene grow. And I know, I forget who made it. Someone made a subreddit called For Honor Tournaments. It never really picked up, but I think if you wanted to keep the competitive subreddit as kind of this like subreddit dedicated to tech and balance and how to get better at the game, you could maybe try to use that subreddit as like a way to just talk about the actual competitive scene. Like, hey,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there could be a partner Reddit with the subreddit. That's,
I mean, I feel like
I don't know.
we can probably.
like, I'm sure you guys will look into something like that eventually, because eventually that question will come up with enough importance that it has to be looked into by somebody. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways you could go about it, for sure. But I really like that vision Kai brought up earlier on. I think it's going to happen eventually. Someone's going to do it.
hopefully.
Yeah, and I also think it could kind of force a mindset shift as well, because if it's going to be a subreddit that's specifically about tournaments and specifically about play and everything like that, then the type of post that you're getting now in the competitive subreddit would be less of them, and it would be more tournament focused, which would force people to change how they watch the game, how they view the game. Like Crack was saying, with the competitive or with the tournaments that came out with spectator mode, people were watching these rotations happen, and people were getting more and more interested just by watching, because they actually have the opportunity to look at stuff like that. I think the same thing can happen with a shift in what the subreddit is supposed to be about. If it's supposed to be about tournaments, then people are going to think of the game as through the lens of a tournament.
There's space for that in the subreddit at the moment. I mean, part of the shit people complain about is when they go on subreddit and they see, like, on the front page, either a low quality rework or a post that's not quite a rant, so we haven't removed it, but it's still pretty bad in terms of discussion. But these posts don't get many upvotes, and there's space. If you go to the front page of the subreddit at the moment and you scroll down, there's like, I'd say half of them are one or two less than 10 upvotes, which means that there's space for better content to be visible there. And if people were posting about tournaments or posting more along these lines, they would rise to the top and be visible, and we can change the post flare system. We've already got a flare for tournaments, so there's already you could already post about tournaments, and it will be, if you want to just see tournament posts, you can click on the filter and then just see the tournament posts, even if they weren't being upvoted, which I think they probably would be. So hopefully sort of subreddit can end up more in that direction. But as as moderators, we can't be just making content. No, we can't be the only ones making content either. So hopefully people make that content. Please do make it. Please post it on the subreddit, and it will get all those internet plus points. You get all the karma, which you can take with you to your next life, because that's what it does, right? It's karma. And yeah, hopefully the scene will be better that way.
Yeah. Shadow Puppet said something in chat that the community is too small for two subreddits.
I mean, was the Smash community too small in 90?
You kind of cut out. What were you saying? Try.
Was the Smash community too small in the late 90s scene?
I don't think you have to say the community is too small for two. It's not like it's a different community. It's just different. Like, it's like different purposes. Like, you can have the same people. Like, you have a community like, hey, this is our community for just memeing, and then you can have those same people talking about balance in a completely different subreddit. So I don't think you have to say you're splitting the community. It's just different places for different types of discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. It seems like we should be able to have multiple subreddits that are successful in that kind of stuff. I don't think the community is small. I do agree, but it's growing. But I don't think it's too small to where we couldn't have like the tournament specific subreddit, and then the competitive subreddit, which can be for like stuff like the info hub, and if people want to discuss rework ideas or whatever, that can be a great place for it. But then if people want to discuss tournaments, if people want to discuss what happened in the tournaments, plays, rotations, stuff like that, they can go to the tournament subreddit. And I also think it could be a great way for these people to interact with the top players who played in these tournaments is like, hey, I saw you did this rotation here. Like, can you explain that?
I actually completely disagree, but it's a great place to players. Like, ideally, like a good audience or a good community can be perfectly fine interacting with itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, rather than having figureheads, I need to interact with them or talk to them. Like it's when you go to a Twitch streamer's chat and the community's all interacting with each other. You're like, yo, this is funny. They all have their own memes. They're interacting with each other. They're not all, you know, waiting on the back and word of the streamer. Like, the community is like thriving in of itself, but like obviously just the focal point of whatever the content is. So the content will be the tournaments, and then you know they kind of interact with each other and have their own culture based around that, rather than kind of looking to these figureheads of one tournament. And I think it's a weird way of looking at it as well. Like, I've never looked at, like, even when I was outside the comp scene, I never looked at like comp players who won tournaments as these mythical figureheads. They were just like, well, these are the nerds who've achieved some of the stuff I'd like to achieve as well, and they're really fucking good. I mean, that's the way you just look at it. They're just like other people, you know? I mean, yeah, but you can, you know, it's cool to have an interaction with a top player when you're like outside the scene and stuff. But I think it's a bad kind of thing to push. It's as like a bonus. You get to interact with these sweaty nerds.
Mm-hmm. Sweaty nerd.
The reason I kind of bring that up is because, like, when I'm watching like Clutch stream or I'm watching you stream, Crack, or Setmix, there are always people who are asking questions about the game, like who's the best character, like what do I do here, and in the last episode when I had Clutch and Setmix on, they both talked about how they despised getting questions from people who are so vague.
Oh yes, the vague thing. I remember.
Yeah. It's like they've said that they want to help and that they will help people, but they need people to ask them specific questions, not just vague questions like, oh, like what should I do when I play Warden in 4v4, or what's the best? Oh god,
yeah, it's the best? Like it's impossible to answer.
Yeah, and that's why I bring this up, is because I don't think it should necessarily be an obligation for these top players to interact with these people in this tournament subreddit. But I think it can be a great place outside of the stream or whatever to answer these kind of questions that are like precise in detail. Because you don't want to be streaming like a scrim or MM or something and then always constantly answering these vague questions, when if you can just go to the subreddit.
I mean, sure, but all these guys have Discords and stuff as well.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, are open to things there, and there's lots of channels.
Craig, you keep cutting out.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I might have talked more into my mic. So like the only reason like I really think that's a bad thing to push is because on a tournament Discord, you would be encouraged really heavily to criticize and judge the gameplay of the tournament players. Because I mean, that's part of why you would be in a tournament Discord. You discuss, oh, he fucked up here, or did he not fuck up? And, you know, so it would be weird as a player who participates in a tournament, or someone who would want to like, you interject yourself into those conversations, or what? You know, do you clarify there after there's 20 comments saying you were bad or something, or you were good? And you're trying to explain to them, well, maybe it wasn't that good. It was just a very average thing to do. Or, yeah, I really fucked up. Like, do you interject in? I feel like it's better. It's better that they can, you know, you'd want people to be able to freely talk about comp players in a negative or positive light based on their performances and things. Because it would be awkward to be typing and talking about someone knowing they'll read that later and they'll come back and they won't be happy with what I said, or...
Yeah.
You know, it would be a weird environment, because you want to be able to encourage criticism of these players,
right,
and their plays, and judging what they did in the tournaments and stuff.
Yeah,
as opposed to that interaction. Like, what do you think, Colin?
I mean, I definitely agree that if you want the community to get to that point where they understand, like maybe they can't play as good as the best players, but they also understand how the game's supposed to be played. So you can say, hey, like, why did this player, like this really good player, he did this here? Did he make a mistake? Is this some, like, was he trying some new strategy? But I also think you can have like you can also have those competitive players there, like say like, hey, no, I was like maybe, yeah, I just made a mistake, or we were trying out, trying to see if this worked in that situation. So they don't have to be these figureheads, but they can still be parts of the community. Like they don't just have to like completely like say, hey, we're fenced off and this is just like,
Yeah, I guess it'll depend on the individual player, I suppose.
And you also can't have the case where, if for the community to grow, you can't have the case where you've got one place where people can discuss comp play, and then the comp players can't actually go there or be part of it.
I get
then
that.
how
I
they'll
guess
grow and get better and become comp players, then they have to leave the community that they've.
I guess it depends on how the individual players take criticism, I suppose. I might be good for drama. I'm already looking forward to this Reddit.
Yeah, we'll make a Hall of Fame of best players ever, and then we can rank them all, and then cause a huge amount of drama when one person is not ranked as highly as they think they should be. Somebody's ranked.
Oh, remember top 20 drama?
Oh, top 20 drama is the best.
What's this? Tell me about top 20
It's
drama.
so good.
I don't think
Just an
around.
arbitrary fucking list of whoever's active at a given time.
And
And top 20 players, and then how that really upsets anyone who's not on it.
Why am I 16 and not 14? Why am I 9 and not 11?
I remember when Presmo got
Nine.
put on it. That was pretty funny. Like just how like people talked about it. No offense to Presmo. I love you, Presmo. But the whole top
Shade.
20 Presmo, that was funny.
They have a. Well, I would really quite like to have something like, if we could have. I mean, not leaderboards is a weird phrase, but team performances and.
I mean, that would you'd be able to get that really easy.
Yeah.
Just having the tournament win history of all the tournaments, just recording them all.
And that'd be nice. It'd be nice to be able to see people move up and down that, and if there's a more central place for it, then that could give people more motivation to compete, to get there.
I mean, yeah, it's like if the start of it was the most recent one, people want to be the most recent winners, right?
Yeah, we do something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe do it on a season by season basis or something like that.
Oh yeah, you wouldn't even have to keep a list like that updated like weekly or anything. You do like every 4 weeks you add in like 12 tournament results or something, and then see in 4 weeks.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I think about doing something like that. That's quite interesting. I'm going to add it to my big list of
Long-term projects.
Long-term project, yeah.
I have like 20 of them.
There's something that Shadow Puppet just said in chat that I kind of wanted to address that I think is a really big misconception. Is like comp players meme anyone who questions them in For Glory. I would say that's largely untrue, depending upon the attitude that the questioning comes from. If you come in and you're hostile and you criticize and stuff like that, with it being abundantly obvious that you're doing it in the incorrect spirit, you're gonna get memed on. People are not going to take you seriously. But it is absolutely not the case that people get memed on all the time when they ask questions about the game.
I mean, For Honor or For Glory also isn't For Honor comp Discord. Like, it's just For Glory.
Yeah.
It's not everyone isn't there playing comp For Honor. Like the vast majority of people in there are not playing comp For Honor. Yeah. So I don't maybe way back when, you could maybe expect someone to answer it. But I mean, I don't know why you would go into For Glory General now and expect that you should be answered a question on something, because the 8 people talking to each other in general probably maybe not be talking about For Honor at all, or care,
right,
or play tournaments, so maybe they don't give a shit. I mean, it's not a For Honor comp Discord now, so.
Right, okay. I try to answer any questions that show up.
Yeah.
So say back when I first joined For Glory, like over 2 years ago, I was pretty much, I wasn't like directly invited, but I was kind of like, I knew Alernican and Bandana. Like I talked to them in other Discords and they would mention For Glory, and they were like, hey, maybe you should, it was mostly Bandana, like, hey, if you can beat me, I'll give you an invite. I obviously didn't beat him, but I did find out that it was just a public Discord, and I went in there and I just wanted to improve. Like every single one of the best players in the world was in that Discord server, and you could say, hey, I wanted to say, how do you play Nabushi in 4v4s? What do I do in the mid lane? I knew nothing, and everyone was super helpful. And I think maybe not for glory, but if you're talking to the best players, like the top competitive players, if you just ignore like your own opinion and only ask like for advice, only ask like specific questions, how to get better at the game, I think a lot of them are more than happy to explain things to you. It's just when you say, it's when you go to them and say, hey, I think this, and then they explain to you, and you're like, but I don't think that's right, because in my experience, especially when you say like in my matchmaking experience, that's when the top players are going to be like your matchmaking experience doesn't mean anything. Like they get tired of hearing like, well, in my experience, because you're not playing in tournaments, so what does that experience even mean?
Yeah. Okay, so apparently I misread the question. Or misread what Shadow Puppet was saying. He was saying questioning from Reddit, memes are in for glory. So I guess I'm missing what exactly.
Wait, what's the question?
I'm confused.
I'm confused as well.
No, Sorsu was reading out a statement made in chat, and the guy is backtracking on a statement saying it's from a pasta. But either way, you answered it, so it's fine.
Yeah. Well, and maybe he was talking specifically about the questions that people get from Reddit. And I don't really know how... I know Crack answers questions on Reddit. I've seen that occasionally. I don't know how much Setmix goes there. I don't know how much Clutch goes there.
I don't answer questions on Reddit. Ever.
I've just seen you comment on stuff. I guess that's the basis
I think
of that.
I've like 5 comments in like 5 months.
A healthy amount.
So, yeah. You saw an eerily high number of my comments in those 5 months.
Yeah.
Like 80%.
But yeah, even if there's questions that are coming from Reddit and stuff like that, I mean, like part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast about this specific topic is because there's a pretty big preconception about the subreddit and the mindset that the subreddit has, that a lot of the competitive players don't take it very seriously. So that can be a reason why they may not take these questions from the subreddit seriously or not. But all I can tell you is from personal experience that when I ask Clutch, when I ask Setmix, when I've asked other people for specific advice, they have been more than happy to give it to me. Setmix has reviewed many of the VODs of the tournaments that I've done, and he's given me advice. So I don't know. I just don't agree that these guys that they don't actually help people out.
Oh, no,
I definitely think it's how you approach them that might make
it's how you approach them, and also to some extent it's the environment in which you approach them. For Glory can be quite hostile and quite memey and quite at times. And if you go and ask a question just in Full Glory, then it might not necessarily be the person you're even asking the question who replies to you with the meme. But I'm sure if you go to their stream chat or their own individual discords or ask questions elsewhere, then you get better response.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So is there anything else you guys wanted to add on any of the topics that we've talked about? Mindset, the role of the subreddit, the info hub, anything?
If
you want to answer questions, maybe, but
okay.
I don't really have anything to add.
Yeah.
Comment on subreddit. Put your good content on the subreddit, and be happy and love one another. Peace to the world and all that.
When's the console tier list coming out? Great question, Magnetic Freeze.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a statement to make about that.
Okay.
Like, I get console play is different. It is different from PC play, right? Because the game just feels worse. But I think some people exaggerate it too much. Where like console like the meta is just completely different. Because at the end of the day, like you still have these same people winning those console tournaments. You just have PC players going on to console. So it does change.
Well. the
Yeah,
character
like
picks
similar
in the
picks.
who. If you look at the finals, it's not like some characters were present there that weren't in the PC finals.
And they might change their picks, but they're all still the same.
No,
like,
I
top tier
think
characters.
we
Like-
had the exact same composition in the end for the PS4 Grand Finals as we had for the PC Grand Finals EU.
Yeah.
I think both comps were the same. LB, Raider, Shaman, BP for both.
But some people might say like, oh, like I know back in the day, Scorpion was like, oh, we'll use Kensei instead of Nabushi in the console for mid, just because like you were landing just like these raw zones on people a lot easier. But it's relatively the same, right? It's the same people winning, the same characters are winning. So I think while the game is definitely worse, and you can hit light attacks more often, it's not as different. Like Orochi's not this top tier character on console.
I mean, in 1v1s, he's definitely.
Well, in a
But
game like that
he
matters.
still suffers from most of the same issues. Like his core problems are still his core problems, right?
Yeah.
Which affects him really hard on a macro level, which comes back to like macro being so important.
And even on a 1v1 basis, it's not like
so.
any characters that have unreactable safe defense.
I mean, yeah, like
on
if
PC
you're
don't have it on console as well.
which ones?
No, I'm saying it's not it. Every character that has good defense on PC also has good defense on console. So
Yeah, but there's lots of characters with near good offense on PC that have good offense on console.
but would you say I feel like
I mean,
even at
Lawbringer.
that point, yeah.
Lawbringer is fucking devastating when he's in chain on console. That is not true on PC.
Yeah. I saw Clutch
He's
throwing a
got
lot of
pressure in
things.
chain on PC, but in his chain on console, he's fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Like stuff that's near, like stuff that's reactable is pushed into unreactable. Like a lot of stuff, like via that input delay.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a really big reason for it. So, but it doesn't change the bigger picture, like Kai is saying. Like we still end up with the same comp at the end of the tournament anyway. But I mean, there is some stuff to be aware of. But it is interesting that it was the same comp that won it in the end anyway. Like regardless of things that were pushed into unreactability.
Yeah.
For heroes.
Well, I think especially with any fours tier list, macro, match level, team level play is far more important than individual character performance. Anyway,
Yeah.
So the tier list is mostly based on that, and it's not going to change a huge amount. Whereas if you look at if you look at the duels tier list,
A duels tier list will look very
that could
different.
change.
Yeah.
Because reactability is obviously a very different parameter there.
The fours will be very, very, very similar. People go up and down, but in the end it'll look really similar. Yeah, but duels are definitely there's quite a shift. I don't even know. I mean, it's not even worth doing duels in the first place. This theoretical tier list wouldn't be worth creating, but I mean, it would look different if it was made quite a bit.
Yeah. It seems like tier lists really only will matter in fours, at least, if both teams have equal skill in terms of macro. Then it's when individual characters...
The issue with tier lists for console anyway, console is straight from the get-go an playing environment. I don't know. A tier list for console straight off the bat would be an abnormal playing environment.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be worth creating because the playing environment makes no sense to create it for. It's like, why would you create it for the abnormal environment?
I mean,
off
nobody's
fixing
going to
the
make a tier list especially for the Spaniard, because I've got reactions of a snowman.
I mean, that's what personal tier lists are for. I mean, Legion's got one.
He does.
I mean, I think people don't realise that all tier lists are subjective, even the ones that are collated from lots of top players. It's there's always going to be inherent biases.
I mean, yeah, they're unavoidable. I mean, that's why good tier lists, people who are good at creating tier lists will say this is not, perfectly objective. This is like, an indicator of meta.
Yeah,
that's kind of it.
I think that's I've tried to give that as the in a disclaimer on the tier list page in the info hub, but it's a difficult thing to get across because people just want to see, oh, this character's A tier. That's it. Fact. And then people do the same thing with the Ubisoft's win matrix data, even though the data's just so terrible.
Yeah.
But these aren't. Even the data's going to be, even if it was accurate, statistically valid data, it doesn't actually mean that this character is factually better than the other one, because better or worse is subjective anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you can obviously take objective numbers and plug them in with each character, but the subjective part comes in the interpretation of what those numbers actually mean in the environment of a 4v4 or whatever game mode it is. Yeah. Okay.
And obviously, there's the whole this character maybe character A is better than character B, but if you are very good at playing character B, how you'll beat character A unless they're played by a person who's also very, very good. And personal individual skill is significantly more important than tier list. I mean, it's not like if I wouldn't beat Clutch playing Warlord even if I was playing Warden, because I'm not as good a player. And that has far more importance than tier list. And people say, oh, I think people give way too much importance on the tier list. I mean, and the fact that different characters do better or worse in the platinum rank, the Ubisoft data shows that the tier list just doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just not applicable in that scenario. If you're a really good player, you can do very well with Centurion.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that tier list is wrong. It just means that you're not playing at a level where the tier list is relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the tier list is not going to necessarily apply to those who are at a lower skill level than those that are playing at the top level. Yeah. Okay. If that's everything everybody has to add, then we can just we can wrap up here. Crack, where can people find you on for your content, as it were?
I mean, Twitch, just search Zero Crack, and YouTube is the same thing.
Okay.
Did I cut out?
No, you're good. We heard you.
Okay. I saw a green flicker. I was worried.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I think I do have commands for both Crack and I don't remember if it's and for Kai as well, maybe.
Commands for Kai. What?
Yeah.
Kai commands.
There it is.
I don't know what commands.
Yeah. Well, these are just so. This is where you can find people, and then
Twitch commands Kai.
Yeah.
Oh wait. Do you have my stream link?
Yeah. I have your stream link.
Oh yeah, you can watch me play Fire Emblem.
Yeah, dude. Fire Emblem gameplay, 100% worth.
That'll teach you a lot about For Honor.
Yeah, I don't stream because I don't think it'd be very useful to anybody to see me failing really badly and against level 2 bots in arcade or whatever.
Hey, I don't know. Entertainment value is entertainment,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in chat, I have Crack stuff. I have Kai's stream, and then obviously Spaniard is on the competitive subreddit.
And so the Discord and the rest of the ones. If you have questions, write them in the question and answer thread. We will do our best to get to them. If you have suggestions for things that you want the mod team to be doing on the competitive subreddit, tell us. I'm very receptive to any and all feedback, unless you're just going to tell me I'm a retard, in which case...
Not very receptive to that.
Well, I mean, I'm receptive to it, but what can I do about it, really? Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you guys for being on here.
Thanks for chatting, Craig, as well.
Yeah.
G to fuck G.
Yeah.
G to fuck G, indeed. G to fuck G.
I'd also want to say, if you wanted to find me, the For Honor Mentors Discord or the competitive subreddit Discord, that's probably where, because I keep those unmuted. I keep most Discords muted, but those I keep unmuted. So, if you just ask a question in there, as long as there's not a ton of people talking, I'll probably see it.
Kai is really good at answering questions there. So.
Yeah.
And Shadow Puppet does a great job in the question and answer thread as well. So, people are there to answer
Shout out
questions.
to all the Comp For Honor mods.
Yeah, thanks for Thornbushy and Dull and the other ones who don't as well.
Especially Barace for, I mean, you know how active he is in the community.
Well, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But
God bless
they are
them.
always there to ask advice. So I sometimes message them to ask them about like what should we do in this situation, and they help as well. So
Okay.
thanks everybody. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. Any more shout outs? Crack, do you want to shout anybody out since other people have been?
I'd like to shout out Kai's cat for being so patient and sitting still
Yeah.
the entire time.
Where's Noodles? Where's my cat got to?
Yeah.
She's this. All right, we won't disturb her. Next time you can see my cat.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Fun talks.
Absolutely.